The church doors slammed open at dawn, and every head in that frontier town turned to watch a woman in a wedding dress walk alone down that dusty aisle. But it wasn't the bride anyone expected. What happened that morning would tear apart two of the most powerful ranching families in the territory, expose secrets that should have stayed buried, and force a choice that no one saw coming. This is a story about the sister nobody wanted, the man who lost everything in front of a crowd, and the decision that changed both their lives forever. Stay with me until the end, hit that like button, and drop a comment telling me what city you're watching from. I want to see how far this story travels. The Hart Ranch house sat on the edge of the valley like a monument to everything Samuel Hart had built with his own two hands and other men's blood. 3 stories of whitewashed wood and stone, wraparound porches on every level, and windows that caught the sunrise so fierce it looked like the whole place was on fire every morning. Lila had watched that sunrise from her bedroom window for 23 years, and she'd never once felt like she belonged inside those walls. She stood there now, her forehead pressed against the glass, watching the last stars fade over the eastern ridge. Her sister's room was empty. Had been empty since sometime after midnight, though Lila couldn't say exactly when. She'd heard the floorboards creak, heard the soft click of a door, heard a horse's hooves on packed earth moving away at a careful walk until they were far enough from the house to break into a run. Catherine was gone. The wedding dress hung on the door of Catherine's wardrobe like a ghost, all white silk and French lace that had cost more than most families in town made in a year. Their father had ordered it special from San Francisco, had it shipped by rail and then by wagon, had made sure everyone knew it was coming, just like he'd made sure everyone knew about the wedding itself. The union of the Hart and Bennett families, the 2 largest cattle operations in 3 territories coming together through marriage. A dynasty, he'd called it, the future of the whole damn valley. Lila turned away from the window and looked at that dress. In a few hours, Catherine was supposed to wear it, was supposed to walk down the aisle of the town church with every rancher, shopkeeper, and hired hand watching, was supposed to marry Cole Bennett, the eldest son of Thomas Bennett, and seal an alliance that had been in the works since both families first claimed their land 20 years ago. Except Catherine was halfway to Denver by now, if Lila had to guess. Maybe further. Footsteps in the hallway. Heavy boots. Their father didn't knock, just pushed the door open and stopped when he saw Lila instead of Catherine. "Where is she?" Samuel Hart was a tall man, gone thick around the middle, but still strong enough to break a horse or a man if the situation called for it. His face was weathered leather, his eyes the color of creek stones, and right now those eyes were hard enough to cut glass. Lila met his gaze straight on. "Gone." "Gone where?" "Just gone. She left sometime after midnight." Her father's jaw worked. She could see him processing it, running through options, calculating damage. He moved to the wardrobe, yanked it open like Catherine might be hiding inside, then turned on Lila. "You knew." "I suspected." "And you didn't think to tell me?" "Would you have listened?" His hand came up fast, and for a second she thought he might actually hit her. He'd never raised a hand to either of his daughters before. Samuel Hart was a lot of things. But he wasn't that kind of man, but there was a first time for everything, and the way his fingers trembled said he was close. He lowered his hand slowly, took a breath. "Do you have any idea," he said, his voice deadly quiet, "what this is going to do?" "I imagine it'll embarrass you in front of the Bennetts." "Embarrass?" He laughed, but there was no humor in it. "Girl, this isn't about embarrassment. The Bennetts have been waiting for this alliance for 2 decades. Thomas Bennett moved heaven and earth to make sure his boy would marry into this family. We've got contracts signed, land agreements pending, water rights that depend on this union going through. If Catherine doesn't show up, she won't. Then we're ruined. You understand that? The Bennetts will pull every agreement, call in every debt. They'll drive us into the ground and smile while they do it." Lila had known it would be bad. She hadn't realized it would be this bad. Her father moved to the window, stared out at the lightning sky. Dawn was coming fast now, pink and gold spreading across the valley floor. In town, people would be waking up, getting dressed in their Sunday best, heading to the church early to get good seats. The wedding wasn't until 10 o'clock, but everyone wanted to be there, wanted to witness history. "She left a note," Lila said quietly. Samuel spun around. Where? In her jewelry box. I found it an hour ago. And you're just now telling me? Lila walked to Catherine's dresser, opened the small wooden box their mother had left to Catherine before she died, and pulled out the folded paper. She handed it to her father and watched his face as he read. She didn't need to see the words. She'd memorized them already. Father, I can't marry a man I don't love just to please you and the Bennetts. I won't spend my life as a bargaining chip in someone else's game. I'm leaving tonight. Don't try to find me. By the time you read this, I'll be far enough away that it won't matter. Tell Cole I'm sorry, but not sorry enough to come back. See, Samuel's hands shook as he crumpled the paper. Selfish, spoiled, after everything I gave her, she didn't want what you gave her. And you? He turned that hard gaze on Lila. What do you want? It doesn't matter what I want. No, he agreed. It never has. The words hit harder than a slap would have. Lila had always known where she stood in their father's eyes. Catherine was the beautiful one, the charming one, the daughter who looked like their mother and carried herself like she owned every room she walked into. Lila was the other one. Quieter, plainer, useful enough when it came to managing the ranch books and handling the household accounts, but not the kind of daughter you showed off to important guests. Not the kind of daughter you built dynasties around. Samuel paced the room, his boots loud on the wooden floor. Outside, the sky was getting lighter. Somewhere in town, Cole Bennett was probably getting ready, putting on the suit his mother had made for him, thinking about the day ahead, thinking about Catherine. Poor bastard had no idea what was coming. The church, Samuel said suddenly. Everyone will be there. The whole town. Thomas Bennett, his family, our neighbors. Every rancher within 100 miles came for this. I know. If we don't show up, if there's no wedding, there won't be a wedding either way. Catherine's gone. But they don't know that yet. He stopped pacing, looked at her with an expression she couldn't quite read. We still have time before the ceremony. We could send riders, try to track her down. She's been gone for hours. She could be anywhere by now. Then we postpone. Tell everyone she's sick. Buy ourselves time to figure this out. Lila shook her head. You really think Thomas Bennett is going to accept a postponement after everything he's invested in this alliance? Her father's silence was answer enough. The sky was full light now, the sun clearing the ridge. In 90 minutes, the church bells would ring. People would file in, fill the pews, wait for the bride. I have to tell them, Samuel said finally. I have to go to the church and explain that there won't be a wedding. Yes. Thomas will destroy us. Probably. He looked at her then, really looked at her, and something shifted in his expression. She saw the calculation happening behind his eyes, saw the gears turning, and felt ice slide down her spine. No, she said. You could wear the dress. Absolutely not. It would fit. You and Catherine are close enough in size. I said no. Lila. He crossed the room in 3 strides, grabbed her shoulders. Not rough, but firm, desperate. Please, I know what I'm asking. I know it's not fair, but if we don't give the Bennetts a wedding, they'll take everything. The ranch, the land, everything your mother and I built, everything that should be yours someday. This ranch was never going to be mine. It could be. If you do this, if you marry Cole Bennett, he doesn't want me. He wants Catherine. He wants an alliance. The girl doesn't matter. The words hung in the air between them, brutal in their honesty. The girl doesn't matter. Lila had always known it, but hearing her father say it out loud made something crack inside her chest. I won't do it, she whispered. Then we lose everything. Maybe we deserve to. His hands tightened on her shoulders. Your mother spent 15 years building this ranch beside me. She died giving birth to you and Catherine, and with her last breath she made me promise I'd protect what we built. I've spent 23 years keeping that promise. I will not lose it all because one selfish girl decided her feelings mattered more than family. Catherine's feelings do matter. I'm not talking about Catherine. Lila stared at him. You think I'm being selfish? I think you have a chance to save everything, and you're too proud to take it. Too proud? She laughed, sharp and bitter. You want me to walk into that church and marry a man who's in love with my sister in front of everyone we know, and you think pride is what's stopping me? I think cowardice is what's stopping you. The words hit like a fist. Lila jerked back, broke free from his grip. I have never asked you for anything.
This story was posted
Samuel
on the
said,
channel
his
west
voice
of
rough.
Betrayal.
I have
Please
never
do not
asked you to
repost
be
it
Catherine.
in any form.
Never asked you to be anything but useful. But I'm asking now. I'm begging. Put on that dress. Walk into that church. Save this family. And then what? Live the rest of my life as Catherine's replacement? Watch Cole look at me every day and wish I was her? You'll survive. We all survive things we don't want. Lila turned away from him, looked at the wedding dress hanging on the door. All that silk and lace, all that money, all that hope for a future that was never meant to include her. If I say yes, she said quietly, you'll give me the ranch accounts, full control. No more questioning my numbers, no more second-guessing my decisions. Done. And the western grazing land, the section by the creek, that becomes mine, legally. Mine alone, no matter what happens with the marriage. She heard him hesitate. That land was valuable, prime water access, but he was desperate enough to agree. Fine. I want it in writing, before the wedding. There's no time. Then we better work fast. She turned to face him, saw the relief and calculation mixing in his expression. He'd won. He'd gotten what he wanted. But so had she, in a way. If she was going to sell herself into a marriage she didn't want, she'd at least get something concrete out of it. Not love, not respect, but land, security. Something that couldn't be taken away when the pretty sister came home. I'll have the papers drawn up within the hour, Samuel said. You have my word. His word. Lila almost laughed, but she just nodded. Then I suppose I should get dressed. Mustn't. The church sat in the center of town like a white beacon, its steeple reaching up toward a sky gone hard and blue. By the time Lila arrived in her father's wagon, every hitching post was full, every bit of shade claimed by horses and carriages. People milled around outside in their Sunday clothes, men in dark suits and string ties, women in their best dresses with bonnets to keep off the sun. They all turned when the wagon pulled up. Lila sat in the back, hidden under a canvas tarp her father had thrown over her. The wedding dress was too fine to risk getting dusty on the ride into town. And besides, no one could see her before the ceremony. That was tradition. Even if everything else about this day was a lie, they'd at least pretend to honor tradition. We're here, Samuel said quietly. Side door, quick as you can. She climbed down from the wagon, the dress heavy and awkward, and let her father hustle her around to the small door that led directly into the room where brides were supposed to prepare. Someone had left flowers in there, wild roses and sage, and the smell made her stomach turn. Through the wall, she could hear the church filling up. Voices, laughter, the sound of families claiming their pews, neighbors greeting neighbors. This was the social event of the year, maybe the decade. Everyone who mattered was here, including Cole Bennett. Lila had seen him around town, of course. The Bennett Ranch bordered Heartland to the north, and their fathers had been negotiating this alliance for as long as she could remember. But she'd never really talked to him. That had been Catherine's job. Catherine had gone to the formal dinners, sat beside him at the negotiating table, smiled and charmed and played her part perfectly. All Lila knew was what she'd observed from a distance. Cole Bennett was tall and broad-shouldered, with his father's dark hair and his mother's sharp eyes. He worked his family's ranch hard, spent more time with cattle than people, and didn't smile much. He'd agreed to this marriage the way men agreed to any business deal, with a firm handshake and an understanding of what each party brought to the table. He was probably out there right now, standing at the front of the church beside the minister, waiting for Catherine. Lila closed her eyes, took a breath, tried to steady herself. The door opened and her father came in with a piece of paper in his hand. The land grant, he said, signed and witnessed. The western section is yours, legal and clear. I also added a clause giving you full control of the ranch finances effective immediately. She took the paper, scanned it quickly. The legal language was dense, but the meaning was clear enough. Whatever happened after today, she'd have something that was hers, something Catherine couldn't take back just by showing up. Thank you, she said, though the words tasted like ash. The church is full. Thomas Bennett is in the front row with his family. Cole is at the altar. Samuel paused. There's still time to back out. Is there? No, he admitted. Not really. Then I suppose we should get this over with. He looked at her for a long moment, and she wondered if he felt anything. Guilt, maybe. Regret. But his expression was unreadable, carved from the same stone as his business deals and land contracts. I'll walk you down the aisle, he said, just like we planned. It wasn't me you planned to walk down the aisle. No, but it's you standing here. That's got to count for something. It didn't, Lila thought, but she didn't say it out loud. The organ music started, filtering through the wall, the processional, her cue. Samuel offered his arm. She took it, felt the solid weight of him beside her, and thought about all the times she'd wanted him to notice her, to see her as something more than the useful daughter, the one who could run numbers and manage accounts but wasn't worth showing off. Well, he was noticing her now. Had to be. They stepped out of the side room into the short hallway that led to the main church. Ahead, Lila could see the congregation through the doorway, row after row of people standing and turning to look. The organ music swelled. Someone gasped, because it wasn't Catherine walking down that aisle. Lila lifted her chin and stepped into the church. The silence that fell was absolute. 200 people frozen mid-breath, staring at the wrong bride in the right dress. She kept her eyes forward, focused on the altar where Cole Bennett stood with his back straight and his hands clasped in front of him. He was staring too. Everyone was staring. Lila's legs felt like water, but she kept walking. One step, then another. The aisle stretched out forever, every face a blur of shock and confusion. Someone whispered something she couldn't make out. Someone else made a sound that might have been a laugh or might have been a sob. Her father's arm under her hand was rigid. He was walking her to her execution, and they both knew it. Halfway down the aisle, Lila made the mistake of looking to the right. There, in the front pew, sat Thomas Bennett. He was a bigger man than Samuel, broader through the shoulders, with iron gray hair and a face that looked like it had been carved with an axe. His wife sat beside him, small and bird-like, her face pale. And next to them, Lila looked away before she could see the rest of the Bennett family's reactions. It didn't matter. She could feel their stares like brands. 3 more rows. 2. 1. They reached the altar, and Samuel stopped. The minister stood there in his black robes, his Bible open in his hands, his expression caught somewhere between confusion and panic. Cole Bennett hadn't moved. He was still standing there like a statue, his face carved from stone. Lila looked at him properly for the first time. He was handsome in a rough way, all hard angles and weathered skin. His eyes were dark brown, almost black in this light, and they were locked on her face with an intensity that made her want to step back. There was no warmth in those eyes, no welcome, just shock, gradually hardening into something else. Anger, maybe, or calculation. Samuel cleared his throat. "There's been a change," he said, loud enough for the whole church to hear. "Catherine took ill in the night, but my daughter Lila has agreed to stand in her place." The lie was bold and transparent. Nobody in this church believed Catherine was sick. They could see the truth written all over this disaster. The wrong sister, the desperate father, the business deal falling apart in real time. Someone in the back rows laughed, actually laughed. Thomas Bennett rose to his feet. "Samuel, a word. After the ceremony, now." The 2 men locked eyes across the altar. The whole church held its breath. Then Samuel nodded stiffly and stepped away, leaving Lila standing there alone in her sister's wedding dress. The fathers moved to the side of the church, their voices low but sharp. Lila couldn't hear what they were saying, but she could see Thomas Bennett's face going red, could see her father's hands clenched at his sides. This was the confrontation she'd known was coming, the collapse of 2 decades of careful planning. She glanced at Cole. He was watching his father, his jaw tight. "I'm sorry," Lila said quietly. "This wasn't my idea." "No? I'm not stupid enough to think you'd want this." His eyes cut to her, sharp as glass. "Then why are you here?" "Same reason you are, I imagine. Family obligation." Something flickered across his face, surprise maybe that she'd said it out loud. But before he could respond, Thomas Bennett's voice rose loud enough for everyone to hear. "Unacceptable. We had an agreement, Samuel, and you can't just substitute one daughter for the other like changing
This story
horses
was
midstream.
posted on the channel west
Catherine
of
is
Betrayal.
gone, Samuel
Please do
shot
not
back.
repost it
But the
in any
alliance
form.
still stands. My daughter for your son. The terms don't specify which daughter. The hell they don't. The contracts all name Catherine Hart. The contracts specify a union between our families. Lila is my daughter, blood and legal. The alliance holds. You expect my son to marry a woman he's never even courted? A woman who wasn't part of any of our negotiations? I expect your son to honor his commitment to this family, just as I'm honoring mine. The words echoed through the church. Every person in every pew was drinking this in, storing up details to share over dinner tables for the next month. The Hart-Bennett wedding would be talked about for years, but not in the way anyone had planned. Thomas Bennett turned to his son. Cole? Cole had been still as carved wood through the whole exchange, but now he straightened. Sir, you have no obligation to proceed with this farce. Don't I? The woman you agreed to marry isn't here. That nullifies any agreement. The agreement was between families, not individuals. You told me that yourself. Cole's voice was level, emotionless. You said this wasn't about love or personal choice. It was about securing our future. That was when the bride was Catherine Hart, and now the bride is Lila Hart. Different woman, same alliance. Thomas's face went dark. You can't possibly. Why not? Cole looked at his father with an expression Lila couldn't quite read. You've been telling me for 20 years that this marriage was my duty, that I needed to think about the ranch, about the family name, about building something bigger than myself. Well, here's my chance. This is not what we planned. No, Cole agreed. It's better. The church went absolutely silent. Even Samuel stopped mid-breath, because that wasn't the response anyone had expected. Thomas stared at his son. What are you talking about? Cole turned to look at Lila, and she felt that dark gaze sweep over her like a physical thing, assessing, measuring. She lifted her chin and met his eyes straight on, refusing to look away. You want to marry me? She asked bluntly. Or you want to spite your father? The corner of his mouth twitched, almost a smile. Can't it be both? Not a great foundation for a marriage. Neither is marrying a woman who ran away in the middle of the night. Fair point. Cole. Thomas's voice had gone deadly quiet. Think about what you're doing. I'm thinking that I've spent my whole life doing exactly what you told me to do. Followed every order. Managed the ranch your way. Agreed to marry a woman I barely knew because you said it was good business. Cole's voice was still level, but there was an edge to it now, sharp as a knife blade. And maybe I'm tired of it. You're making a mistake, my mistake to make. If you go through with this mockery of a wedding, don't expect my support. I've never had it before. Don't see why I'd need it now. The words hung in the air like smoke. Lila watched Thomas Bennett's face cycle through shock, rage, and finally something that looked almost like respect, or maybe just recognition. The understanding that his son had finally grown a spine, even if it was at the worst possible moment. Fine, Thomas said coldly. Marry her, but don't come crying to me when this falls apart. Wouldn't dream of it. Thomas Bennett turned on his heel and stalked back to his pew, his wife following like a ghost. The congregation sat frozen, everyone trying to process what they'd just witnessed. This was supposed to be a grand alliance, a celebration. Instead, it had turned into a public humiliation for two of the most powerful families in the territory, and it was about to get worse. Cole turned to Lila. You heard all that. Kind of hard to miss. So you know what you're getting into. A husband who's doing this partly to prove a point to his father, and a marriage that everyone in this church thinks is a joke. And you know what you're getting, she countered. A wife who's here because her father threatened to lose the ranch if she didn't show up, wearing a dress meant for someone else. They stared at each other. Two people who'd never chosen this, standing at an altar in front of 200 witnesses, about to make promises they had no reason to keep. We could both walk away, Cole said quietly. Right now. I'd survive my father's anger. You'd survive losing the ranch. Would we? Probably not, but it's an option. Lila looked at him, really looked at him, saw the anger in his eyes, yes, but also something else, a kind of recklessness, a willingness to burn everything down just to prove he could. She recognized it. She felt it too. "If we do this," she said slowly, "I want one thing clear." "What's that?" "I'm not her. I will never be her. If you're expecting me to turn into Catherine somehow, I don't want Catherine." The words were flat, emotionless, but they hit like a slap. Lila blinked. "You don't?" "She ran away rather than marry me. That tells me everything I need to know." Cole's jaw tightened. "I want a wife who'll actually show up. Think you can manage that?" It was the lowest possible bar for a marriage, and they both knew it. But standing there in that church, with everyone watching and waiting for this disaster to collapse completely, it was almost funny. Lila felt something crack inside her chest, something that had been holding too tight for too long, and she started to laugh. It wasn't a nice laugh. It was sharp and bitter and completely inappropriate for a wedding, and she saw Cole's eyes widen in shock. But she couldn't stop. The absurdity of it all just crashed over her in waves. "Sorry," she managed, still laughing. "It's just, this is the worst proposal I've ever heard." "It's the only proposal you've ever heard. That doesn't make it less terrible." "No," he agreed. "It really doesn't." She took a breath, got herself under control, looked at this man who was offering her a marriage built on spite and stubbornness and absolutely nothing else. "All right," she said, "let's do it." "You sure?" "No, but I'm doing it anyway." Cole turned to the minister, who had been standing there through this whole exchange looking like he wanted to sink through the floor. "We're ready," Cole said. The minister blinked. Is this... Just do it before one of us changes our mind." The man fumbled with his Bible, found the page, and started reading in a voice that shook. "Dearly beloved, we are gathered here today." Lila stopped listening. She was too busy watching the congregation, seeing the range of reactions. Some people looked scandalized. Some looked delighted at the drama. Samuel Hart looked relieved and triumphant. Thomas Bennett looked like he wanted to burn the church down with everyone in it. And Cole? Cole was looking at her. "Do you, Cole Daniel Bennett, take this woman to be your lawfully wedded wife?" "I do." "And do you, Lila Ann Hart, take this man to be your lawfully wedded husband?" She should say no. Should walk away right now, let this whole disaster collapse. But she looked at Cole and saw the same reckless determination in his eyes that she felt burning in her chest. "I do." "Then by the power vested in me, I pronounce you husband and wife." The minister snapped his Bible shut like he couldn't get through this fast enough. "You may kiss the bride." Cole stepped forward. Lila tilted her face up. Their first kiss happened in front of 200 witnesses, at an altar, in a church, between two people who barely knew each other and definitely didn't love each other. His lips were warm, the kiss was brief, and when he pulled back, his eyes were dark and unreadable. "Well," he said quietly, "we did it." "Yeah," Lila agreed. "We really did." Behind them, the congregation sat in stunned silence. Nobody clapped. Nobody cheered. The organ music didn't start. It was the quietest wedding celebration in the history of weddings. Cole offered his arm. Lila took it. And together, husband and wife, strangers bound by spite and stubbornness, they turned and walked back down that aisle. This time, people didn't stare in shock. They stared in something closer to horror, like they were watching a train wreck in slow motion and couldn't look away. Lila kept her head up, kept walking, let them stare. She'd just married a man she didn't know to save a ranch that had never wanted her anyway. She'd walked into a church wearing her sister's dress and walked out as someone's wife. She'd made promises she had no idea how to keep. But she'd done it on her own terms, taken control of the one thing she could control, her choice to say yes. That had to count for something. They reached the back of the church and stepped out into the bright morning sun. The crowd would follow in a minute, would flood out onto the church steps for the traditional reception. There would be food and music and dancing, all planned for a celebration that wasn't happening. Cole helped her into the waiting carriage. His family's carriage, she realized. She was supposed to ride back to the Bennett Ranch now. Her new home. He climbed in beside her, and the driver snapped the reins. As they pulled away from the church, Lila looked back one time. Saw her father standing on the steps, his face unreadable. Saw Thomas Bennett beside him, anger radiating off him in waves, Saw the crowd starting to emerge, all those faces full of judgment and gossip. Then the carriage turned a corner and they were gone.
This
Lila
story was
faced
posted
forward,
on the
looked at the
channel
man
west
sitting
of
beside
Betrayal.
her husband,
Please do not
though the word
repost it
felt
in any
foreign in her
form.
mouth. So, she said, now what? Cole didn't answer right away. He was looking out at the road ahead, his jaw tight, his hands clenched on his knees. Now, he said finally, we figure out how to survive what we just did. It wasn't reassuring. It wasn't romantic. It wasn't anything close to what a new bride should hear from her husband. But it was honest. And sitting there in that carriage, rolling toward a future neither of them had wanted, Lila decided that honesty might be the only thing they had going for them. It would have to be enough. The Bennett ranch house was smaller than the Hart place, but it sat higher up the valley where the land started to climb toward the mountains. Stone foundation, timber frame, a roof that looked like it had been patched more times than replaced. Practical. Built to last, not to impress. The carriage pulled up to the front steps and stopped. Cole climbed out first, then turned to offer Lila his hand. She took it, gathered up the ridiculous wedding dress, and stepped down onto ground that was supposed to be her home now. A woman emerged from the house, wiping her hands on her apron. She was maybe 50, with gray-streaked hair pulled back in a bun and eyes that took in everything at once. Mrs. Chen, Cole said, this is my wife. The housekeeper's gaze flicked to Lila, then back to Cole. If she was surprised by the wrong bride, she didn't show it. Welcome, Mrs. Bennett. Her voice had an accent Lila couldn't quite place. Your room is ready. Our room, Cole corrected. Mrs. Chen's eyebrow rose fractionally. Of course, your room. She disappeared back inside. Cole stood there for a moment, looking at the house like he'd never seen it before, then started up the steps. Lila followed, the wedding dress catching on rough wood. Inside the house was clean but sparse, furniture that had seen hard use, rugs worn thin in the middle, a stone fireplace that dominated the main room, its mantel bare except for a single clock that ticked loud in the silence. Upstairs, Cole said, not looking at her. Second door on the right. He took the stairs 2 at a time. Lila gathered her skirts and followed more slowly, feeling the weight of the dress with every step. By the time she reached the second floor, Cole had already disappeared into the room. She found him standing by the window, still in his wedding suit, staring out at the valley below. The room was bigger than she'd expected. A large bed with a plain quilt, a wardrobe, a washstand with a pitcher and basin. Everything clean, everything functional, nothing personal. Catherine was supposed to stay here, Cole said without turning around. My mother had the room prepared for her. New linens, fresh paint. She even brought up flowers. Lila looked around and didn't see any flowers. She took them out this morning when she heard the news. He finally turned to face her. Didn't want you to feel like you were sleeping in someone else's room. But I am. Yeah. He loosened his collar. You are. The silence stretched between them, heavy and awkward. This was their wedding night. They were supposed to. Lila's throat tightened. She hadn't let herself think that far ahead. Cole must have seen something in her face because he shook his head. I'm not going to touch you. What? Tonight. Or any night you don't want me to. He pulled off his jacket, tossed it over a chair. We might have gotten married for all the wrong reasons, but I'm not the kind of man who forces himself on his wife. Lila felt something loosen in her chest. Thank you. Don't thank me for basic decency. He started unbuttoning his vest. There's a spare room down the hall. I'll sleep there. Your family will talk. Let them talk. We just gave the whole town enough gossip to last a year. What's a little more? He had a point. Lila turned to the wardrobe, pulled it open, and found it empty except for a few wooden hangers. Right. All her things were still at the Hart Ranch. She hadn't thought to pack anything because up until this morning, she hadn't known she'd be getting married. I don't have any clothes, she said. Mrs. Chen can loan you something for tonight. Tomorrow I'll send someone to collect your things. My father probably already burned them. Cole looked at her sharply. He wouldn't. You don't know him very well. I know he spent 20 years planning this alliance. He got what he wanted. Why would he destroy your belongings? Because I'm not his daughter anymore. I'm your wife. And Samuel Hart doesn't see much point in holding on to things he can't use. Cole studied her for a long moment. He really is a bastard, isn't he? So is your father. Yeah. Cole pulled off his vest, started on his shirt buttons. They deserve each other. Lila watched him undress with the unself-conscious efficiency of a man who'd spent his life working on a ranch. When he stripped off his shirt, she saw muscles earned from hard labor, scars that spoke of accidents and fights. He wasn't trying to impress her. He was just getting comfortable. "I'll get Mrs. Chen," he said, pulling his shirt back on but leaving it unbuttoned. "She'll help you out of that dress." He left before Lila could respond. She stood there in the middle of the room, surrounded by emptiness, wearing a wedding dress that had cost more than some people made in a year, and tried to figure out what the hell she was supposed to do now, Mrs. Chen appeared 10 minutes later with a simple cotton nightgown and a no-nonsense expression. "Turn around," she said. Lila turned, felt the housekeeper's efficient fingers working the endless buttons down her spine. The dress was as complicated to get out of as it had been to get into, layers and lacings designed to require help. "You're not what I expected," Mrs. Chen said. "I'm not what anyone expected. The other one. She was here for dinner once. Very beautiful. Very—" She paused, searching for the word. "Shiny." Lila almost laughed. "That's Catherine. Shiny. You're different. Less shiny? More real." The last button came free and the dress loosened. "Step out." Lila stepped out of the pool of silk and lace. Mrs. Chen gathered it up with more care than it deserved and draped it over a chair. "Mr. Cole is a good man," she said, helping Lila into the nightgown. "Stubborn, angry sometimes, but good. How long have you worked here?" 15 years, since his mother got sick and needed help with the house." Mrs. Chen's hands were gentle, tying the nightgown's ribbons. "She was kind to me when others weren't. I promised her I'd take care of her boys." "Boys plural?" "Cole has a younger brother, James. He's away at school back east." She stepped back, examined Lila with a critical eye. "There. Better. Thank you." Mrs. Chen moved toward the door, then paused. "The marriage bed is your choice, Mrs. Bennet. Don't let anyone tell you different. Not Mr. Cole, not his father, not tradition. Your choice." Then she was gone, leaving Lila alone in a room that didn't feel like hers, wearing a borrowed nightgown on a wedding night that wasn't anything like what she'd imagined as a girl. She climbed into the bed. The sheets were crisp and clean, the mattress firm. Through the window she could see stars starting to emerge in the darkening sky. Somewhere out there, Catherine was probably celebrating her freedom, completely unaware that her flight had bound someone else. Lila closed her eyes and tried to sleep. It took hours. The next morning came hard and early. Someone was hammering on the door before the sun had fully cleared the mountains. Lila jerked awake, disoriented. For a moment, she didn't remember where she was. Then it all crashed back. The wedding, the carriage, this room that wasn't hers. The hammering continued. She stumbled out of bed, pulled on the robe Mrs. Chen had left on the chair, and opened the door. Cole stood in the hallway, already dressed in work clothes. His hair was wet like he'd dunked his head in the water basin, and he looked like he'd slept about as well as she had. "Get dressed," he said. "We've got a situation." "What kind of situation?" "The kind where my father is downstairs threatening to have the marriage annulled." That woke her up fast. She dressed quickly, in the same clothes Mrs. Chen had loaned her the night before, braided her hair back, and followed Cole downstairs. Thomas Bennet stood in the middle of the main room like he owned the place, which, technically, Lila supposed he did. His wife sat on the sofa, her hands folded in her lap, her face carefully blank. "There she is," Thomas said when Lila appeared. "The replacement bride." "Father," Cole started. "Be quiet, boy. I'm talking to your wife." He turned his full attention on Lila. "Do you have any idea what you've done?" "I got married." "You participated in a fraud. The contracts all specified Catherine Hart. You are not Catherine Hart." "The contract specified a union between our families," Lila said, echoing her father's words from the church. "I'm Samuel Hart's daughter, legally and by blood." "A technicality? The law runs on technicalities, Mr. Bennet. I assume you know that, given how many lawyers you keep on retainer." His eyes narrowed. You've got a mouth on you. I've got
This
a brain
story was
too.
posted on
Probably
the
why your
channel
son
west
married
of
me instead of
Betrayal.
walking away.
Please do not
Cole made a
repost
sound
it
that
in
might
any
have been a
form.
laugh or might have been a cough. His mother's lips twitched. Thomas's face went red. This marriage is a mockery. I won't stand for it. Then sit down, Lila suggested. You're making me tired. How dare you? How dare I what? Speak directly? Your son does it. You do it. But apparently women are supposed to simper and smile and let you men make all the decisions. She crossed her arms. I'm not built that way. Cole. Thomas turned to his son. Get this woman under control. She's not a dog, Father. Then what is she? My wife. The words hung in the air, simple, declarative, final. Thomas stared at his son. You can't possibly want this. What I want doesn't matter. We're married, legal and binding. You can threaten all you want, but unless you've got grounds for annulment, we're stuck with each other. I'll find grounds. No, you won't. Cole's voice was flat. Because we both know that annulling this marriage destroys the alliance with the Hearts, and you've spent too much political capital setting this up to let it fall apart now. I can rebuild without the Hearts. Not before the territorial elections. Not before the new railroad contracts get awarded. Not before a dozen other time-sensitive deals that depend on you having Samuel Hart's support. Cole took a step forward. You taught me to think strategically, Father, to always know what cards everyone's holding. Well, here are yours. You need this alliance, even if it's not the one you wanted. And you need me to make it work. Thomas's jaw worked. You think you're very clever. I think I paid attention to every lesson you ever taught me, including the one about cutting losses and adapting to changing circumstances. For a long moment, the two men stared at each other. Lila held her breath, watching the power struggle play out. This wasn't about her, wasn't even really about the marriage. This was 20-some years of father and son coming to a head. Finally, Thomas looked away first. Fine, he said. You want this marriage? You can have it, but don't expect my help when it falls apart. I won't. And don't come crying to me when you realize you married a woman who'll never be what Catherine Hart was. I'm counting on it, Cole said quietly. Thomas grabbed his hat from the table, nodded curtly to his wife. We're leaving. Mrs. Bennet rose gracefully, gave Lila a look that might have been sympathetic or might have been pitying, and followed her husband out. The door slammed hard enough to rattle the windows. Cole stood very still, his shoulders tight, his hands clenched at his sides. That went well, Lila said. He turned to look at her, and something in his expression made her chest tighten. He'll be back. I know. And next time he won't be nice about it. That was him being nice? Cole's mouth twitched, almost a smile. Relatively speaking, he moved to the window, looked out at the ranch yard where his father's carriage was disappearing down the road. He's right about one thing. This marriage is going to be hard. Harder than you expected? I didn't really expect anything. It all happened too fast. He turned back to her. But we're in it now. Might as well figure out how to make it work. Or at least how to survive it. Same thing, probably. Lila crossed to stand beside him at the window. Outside, ranch hands were moving between the barn and the corrals, starting their day's work. Everything looked normal, like the world hadn't just shifted on its axis. I need to know what I'm working with, she said. The ranch, the finances, the contracts your father mentioned, all of it. Cole looked at her sideways. Why? Because I'm not going to sit in this house and embroider pillowcases while you and your father fight over my head. If I'm part of this alliance, I need to understand what I'm part of. You know ranch finances? I've been running my father's books for 5 years. Inventory, payroll, supply orders, market projections. He didn't trust anyone else to do it right. She paused. Which means he trusted me with the ranch, but not enough to let me have any say in how it ran. And you want to say here? I want to know if I just married into a disaster or a functioning business. Cole studied her for a long moment. All right, come on. He led her through the house to a small office at the back. Desk piled with papers, shelves crammed with ledgers, a map of the ranch lands tacked to one wall with colored pins marking different sections. This is everything, he said, gesturing at the chaos. Books going back 10 years, current contracts, herd counts. water rights, land deeds. It's all here. Lila looked at the mess and felt something settle in her chest. This, she understood. This made sense in a way nothing else about her new life did. Can I? She asked, gesturing to the desk. It's your desk too now. She sat down, pulled the top ledger toward her, and started reading. Cole watched for a minute, then left her alone. That's how Lila spent her first full day as Mrs. Bennett, buried in numbers and contracts, learning the shape of the ranch that was supposed to be her home, and what she found made her stomach sink. The Bennett Ranch was in trouble. Not catastrophic trouble, not yet. But the numbers told a story of slow decline, expenses creeping up, profits creeping down, debts that had been refinanced too many times. On paper, it looked like a solid operation, but Lila had been doing this long enough to see the cracks in the foundation. She found Cole in the barn that evening, working on a saddle that needed repair. "Your ranch is bleeding money," she said without preamble. He looked up. "I know." "You know?" "I'm not blind. I've been trying to fix it for the past year." "Trying how?" He set down the leather he'd been working. "Cutting costs where I can, renegotiating supplier contracts, moving herd to better grazing land. It's not enough." "No," Lila agreed. "It's not." "You have a better idea?" She did, actually. She'd spent the afternoon not just reading the books, but analyzing them, comparing them to what she knew from running the Hart Ranch, and she'd seen opportunities. "Your water rights," she said. "You're not using them." "We use them for the herd. I mean the excess rights. You've got access to the Western Creek that you're not utilizing. The Hart Ranch would pay for irrigation access." Cole frowned. "Your father never mentioned that." "Because he was getting ready to marry Catherine to you. Why pay for water when he could just wait and get it through the alliance?" Lila leaned against the stall door. "But now the alliance is different. We can renegotiate, charge him for the water access. He'll refuse. Then we sell the rights to the Miller Ranch. They've been looking to expand their farming operation. That would undercut your father." "Yes," Lila said. "It would." Cole studied her. "You really don't like him, do you?" "I really don't trust him. There's a difference." She crossed her arms. "Samuel Hart will take advantage of any weakness he can find. If you give him free water access because you think it's part of some gentleman's agreement, he'll smile and thank you and then find 12 other ways to squeeze this ranch for everything it's worth." "Sounds like you know him pretty well." "I kept his books. I know exactly how ruthless he can be." Cole was quiet for a moment, turning this over. "All right. What else?" "Your grain contracts. You're buying from Morrison's supplier at twice what you should be paying. I can get you better prices." "How?" "The Hart Ranch buys in bulk. We can combine our orders, negotiate a volume discount, split the savings." "Your father won't go for that either." "He will if I tell him it'll save him money. Samuel Hart loves 3 things: land, money, and himself. In that order. Offer him a better deal and he'll take it." Cole picked up his leather work again, but his mind was clearly elsewhere. "You've got this all figured out." "I had all day with nothing else to do." Most new brides would spend their first day unpacking or decorating or, I don't know, whatever women do. "I'm not most new brides." "No," he agreed. "You're really not." They fell into silence, but it was a different kind of silence than before, less awkward, more like 2 people learning to exist in the same space. "There's one problem with your plan," Cole said finally. "What's that?" "It requires us to work together, you and me, a united front." "Yes, we barely know each other." "So we learn." Lila straightened. "Look, neither of us wanted this marriage, but we're in it. And I don't know about you, but I'd rather make something useful out of it than just survive day to day waiting for it to fall apart." Cole set down the saddle, stood up. He was taller than she'd realized, and in the dim barn light his expression was hard to read. "You mean that," he said, "about making this work?" "I mean it about not wasting my time on something pointless. If we're going to be married, we might as well be successful at it. That's the most practical proposal I've ever heard." "You want romance?" "You should have married Catherine." His jaw tightened at the name, and Lila immediately regretted bringing it up, but he just shook his head. "Romance is for people who have the luxury of choosing their lives. We don't." "No," she agreed, "we don't." He offered his hand. Partners then, in this disaster of a marriage. She took it.
This story
His
was
palm was
posted
rough
on the
with
channel
calluses,
west of
his grip
Betrayal.
firm.
Please do not repost
Partners.
it in any form.
They shook on it like it was a business deal, which, Lila supposed, it was. The next few weeks fell into a rhythm neither of them had expected. Cole worked the ranch during the day, riding fence lines, managing the herd, dealing with the 100 small disasters that came with running cattle. Lila buried herself in the finances, untangling years of messy bookkeeping and finding ways to stretch every dollar. They took meals together, mostly in silence at first. But gradually, the silence got easier. Less like strangers forced together, more like two people who'd learned they didn't need to fill every moment with talk. The southern grazing land, Cole said one evening over dinner. You marked it as underutilized in your notes. Lila looked up from her plate. Because it is. You've got prime grass down there and you're barely running any cattle on it. The fence needs repair. I haven't had time to fix it. So hire someone. Can't afford it. You can if you lease the water rights like I suggested. That gives you cash flow to invest in infrastructure. She stabbed at her potatoes. Everything is connected. Fix one problem and it creates capacity to fix the next. You make it sound simple. It is simple, just not easy. He almost smiled. She was starting to recognize that expression, the slight tightening around his eyes, the way his mouth almost curved before he caught himself. Cole Bennett didn't smile often, but when he almost did, it counted for something. Mrs. Chen brought in the coffee, gave them both an approving look that neither acknowledged, and left them alone. I talked to your father today, Cole said. Lila's fork paused halfway to her mouth. About? The water rights. He wasn't happy. Of course not. He thought he was getting them for free. He tried to argue that the marriage alliance included water access. What did you say? I told him to show me where it says that in writing. Cole took a sip of coffee. He couldn't. So? So he agreed to lease the rights, minimum 5-year contract at market rates. Lila felt something warm spread through her chest. It wasn't quite pride, she barely knew this man, but it was close. That's good, she said. It's better than good. It's $3,000 a year guaranteed income. He leaned back in his chair. You were right. I usually am, about numbers anyway. Just numbers? Everything else I'm making up as I go. That earned her a real smile. Small, but there. It changed his whole face, made him look younger, less burdened. We're a pair, aren't we? He said. You with your numbers, me with my cattle, both of us pretending we know what we're doing. Fake it till you make it. Is that how you survived living with Samuel Hart? The question caught her off guard. They didn't usually talk about personal things, kept everything professional, transactional, safer that way. Mostly I just stayed out of his way, she said finally. Did the work he gave me, kept my head down. Catherine got all the attention. I got to be invisible. You're not invisible now. No. Now I'm inconveniently visible. Inconvenient for who? Your father, for one. My father, for another. Half the town, probably. They'll get over it. Will they? Cole looked at her across the table, his expression serious. Does it matter? Not really, she admitted. I stopped caring what most people thought of me a long time ago. When? When I realized that no matter what I did, I'd never be Catherine, never be the daughter my father wanted, never be pretty enough or charming enough or worth showing off. She picked up her coffee cup. After a while, you either accept it or it destroys you. And you accepted it. I survived it. There's a difference. They drank their coffee in silence for a while. Outside, the sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of orange and purple, the kind of sunset that was supposed to be romantic. But there was nothing romantic about two people who'd married out of spite and necessity, sitting across from each other, trying to figure out how to make the best of a bad situation. Still, it was something. For what it's worth, Cole said quietly, I'm glad it was you. Lila looked up, surprised. What? In the church that day. I'm glad it was you who walked down the aisle and not Catherine. Why? He was quiet for a long moment, turning his coffee cup in his hands. Because Catherine would have made me work for her approval. would have expected me to court her, to woo her, to prove I was worthy of her. He looked up. You just expect me to be honest. That's easier. It was probably the saddest compliment Lila had ever received. But coming from Cole Bennett, a man who didn't waste words on things he didn't mean, it mattered. I'm glad it was you too, she said. Catherine would have run this ranch into the ground within a year. He laughed, actually laughed, a real sound that filled the room. There's that practical streak again. It's all I've got. It's enough. The words hung between them, heavier than they should have been. Because somewhere along the way, this marriage of convenience had started to feel like something more. Not love. Neither of them was naive enough to call it that. But maybe respect. Maybe even the beginning of trust. It wasn't much, but it was more than they'd had on that first day. A month into the marriage, Lila finally went back to the Hart Ranch to collect her things. Cole offered to go with her, but she refused. This is something I need to do alone, she said. He didn't argue. The ride to the Hart Ranch felt longer than it should have. Everything looked the same, the big house on the hill, the barns, the corrals. But Lila felt different, like she was visiting a place she used to live instead of going home. Her father was in his office when she arrived. He looked up when she walked in, his expression unreadable. Lila. Father, I wondered when you'd come back. I'm just here for my things. Of course. He set down his pen. How is married life? Fine. Fine. He almost smiled. That's quite an endorsement. It's honest. Yes, you always were honest. He stood, moved to the window. Your husband drives a hard bargain. That water rights contract cost me more than I expected. You should have negotiated better. I should have seen it coming. Should have realized that marrying you off would create complications I didn't anticipate. Lila felt the familiar sting of his words. Always an afterthought. Always a complication. I made you a promise, Samuel said, still looking out the window. That land grant. The finances control. You earned those. I did. But I need something from you in return. Of course you do. He turned to face her. The Bennett Ranch is in trouble. We both know it. I need to know how bad it is, what their real financial position looks like, what vulnerabilities they have. Lila stared at him. You want me to spy on my husband? I want you to protect your interest. If the Bennett Ranch fails, you'll be left with nothing. Better to know now so we can prepare. Prepare how? By swooping in and buying their land out from under them? By making sure you're protected when this all falls apart. It's not going to fall apart. How can you be so sure? Because I'm fixing it. The words came out sharper than she intended. I'm fixing their books, renegotiating their contracts, finding efficiencies they didn't know existed. The Bennett Ranch will survive. It might even thrive. Samuel's expression shifted. You're working with Cole. He's my husband. He's a business arrangement. He's both. Lila straightened. And whatever problems the Bennett Ranch has, they're my problems now. I'm not going to sabotage my own future to make you feel more secure. Her father studied her for a long moment. You've changed. No, I've just stopped pretending to be someone I'm not. She turned to leave, then paused at the door. Have my things sent to the Bennett Ranch, all of them. I won't be back. Lila, I'm done, Father. Done being the useful daughter. Done being your backup plan. Done being invisible. She met his eyes. I have a life now. It might not be the one you wanted for me, but it's mine. She didn't wait for his response. Just walked out of that office, out of that house, and climbed back on her horse. She didn't look back. When she got back to the Bennett Ranch, Cole was waiting on the porch. He took one look at her face and didn't ask questions, just offered her a hand down from the horse. Your things? He asked. He'll send them. And? And nothing. It's done. He nodded, understanding without needing the details. That was becoming their pattern, knowing when to push and when to let things be. Come on, he said. I want to show you something. He led her out past the barn to the southern pasture where the fence had finally been repaired. Beyond it, cattle grazed on grass that came up to their knees, fat and healthy, in the late afternoon sun. The water rights money, Cole said. I used it to fix the fence and expand the herd. We'll turn a profit this quarter for the first time in 18
This story
months.
was posted
That's
on the
good.
channel west of
It's
Betrayal.
more than good.
Please do not
It's survival.
repost it in any
He
form.
turned to look at her. I couldn't have done it without you. Sure you could have. Would have just taken longer. Maybe. But I'm glad I didn't have to do it alone. They stood there watching the cattle, two people who'd been thrown together by circumstance and were slowly figuring out how to make it work. It wasn't perfect. Wasn't even close to perfect. But it was real. And for the first time in her life, Lila felt like she was exactly where she was supposed to be. Not as someone's replacement, not as the invisible daughter, just as herself. 3 months into the marriage, Lila woke up to the sound of hooves on the road. Multiple horses, moving fast. She sat up in bed, disoriented. Dawn was just breaking, the sky that pale gray that came before sunrise. Cole was already at the window, pulling on his pants. Who is it? She asked. Can't tell yet, but they're coming here. She got out of bed, grabbed the robe Mrs. Chen had given her, and joined him at the window. 4 riders, maybe 5, coming up the valley road at a pace that said urgency or trouble. Probably both. Stay inside, Cole said, pulling on his shirt. Like hell. He looked at her, started to argue, then just shook his head. Fine, but stay behind me. They went downstairs together. Mrs. Chen was already in the kitchen, her face tight with worry. She'd heard the horses, too. Cole opened the front door just as the riders pulled up. Samuel Hart was in the lead, his face flushed, and his horse lathered. Behind him were 3 of his ranch hands, all armed. Lila's stomach dropped. Where is she? Samuel demanded, not bothering to dismount. Where's who? Cole asked. Don't play stupid with me, boy. Where's Catherine? The name hit like a slap. Lila hadn't heard it in months, had almost let herself forget that her sister existed somewhere out there in the world. We don't know where Catherine is, Lila said, stepping forward. She ran away before the wedding. You know that. She's back. The world tilted sideways. Lila gripped the door frame to steady herself. What? She rode into town last night, showed up at the hotel like she'd just been on a pleasant trip. Samuel's jaw worked. She wants to see you. Me? Cole's voice was flat. Both of you. Samuel finally dismounted, moved closer to the porch. She says she made a mistake. Wants to explain. Lila felt something cold settle in her chest. Of course Catherine wanted to explain. That's what Catherine did. Disappeared when things got hard, then came back with a story and a smile and expected everyone to forgive her. Tell her no, Cole said. Samuel's eyes narrowed. You don't get to tell her no. She's got a right to speak her piece. She gave up any rights when she ran away and left Lila to clean up her mess. Lila knew what she was signing up for. Did she? Cole took a step forward. Or did you pressure her into a marriage she didn't want because you couldn't stand the embarrassment of telling the truth? Samuel's hand went to the gun on his hip. His ranch hands shifted in their saddles, hands moving to their own weapons. The air went tight and dangerous. Don't, Lila said sharply. Both of you, just stop. The men looked at her. She stepped between them, put herself in the line of fire, and met her father's eyes. Where is Catherine now? She asked. The hotel. She's waiting. Fine. We'll come to town. But we come on our terms, in our time. Not because you rode up here at dawn making demands. Samuel studied her, and something shifted in his expression. Surprise, maybe. Like he was seeing her clearly for the first time. Noon, he said finally. She'll wait for you until noon. After that, she's leaving again. Good, Lila said. She should. Her father's mouth tightened, but he didn't argue. Just climbed back on his horse and rode off with his men trailing behind. Cole waited until they were out of sight before turning to Lila. You don't have to do this. Yes, I do. Why? You don't owe her anything. No, but I need to see her. Lila wrapped her arms around herself. I need to hear what she has to say. It'll just be excuses and apologies. That's all people like Catherine have. Maybe, but I need to hear them anyway. He studied her for a long moment. All right, we'll go, but we're going together. I wouldn't have it any other way. They rode into town mid-morning, giving themselves time, but not rushing. The hotel sat on Main Street, 2 stories of whitewashed wood with a restaurant on the ground floor. Catherine would have taken the best room, of course. She always did. Lila dismounted, tied her horse, and stood looking up at the building. Her hands were shaking. She clenched them into fists. Cole came to stand beside her. "Last chance to change your mind." "I'm not changing my mind." "Then let's get this over with." The hotel clerk directed them to room 7, second floor, corner window. Lila climbed the stairs with Cole behind her, each step heavier than the last. When they reached the door, she stopped. "What if—" she started. "What if what?" "What if seeing her again changes things?" Cole's hand came to rest on her shoulder, warm and solid. "Nothing changes unless we let it." She nodded, took a breath, and knocked. The door opened immediately, like Catherine had been waiting right on the other side. Lila's breath caught. Her sister looked exactly the same, dark hair perfectly styled, skin glowing, wearing a dress that probably cost more than most families made in a month. Beautiful, confident, untouched by the consequences of her actions. "Lila," Catherine said, her voice warm, "I'm so glad you came." "Don't." Lila's voice came out harder than she intended. "Don't act like we're friends." Catherine's smile faltered. "Can we at least talk? Please?" She stepped back, gesturing them into the room. It was exactly as Lila had imagined. Expensive furnishings, fresh flowers, everything perfect. Catherine had always been good at surrounding herself with nice things. Cole followed Lila inside but stayed close to the door, his arms crossed. Catherine's eyes flicked to him, and something complicated passed across her face. "Cole," she said softly, "you look well." "Can't say the same about your timing." I know it's terrible, but I had to come back, had to explain." "You don't owe us an explanation," Lila said. "You made your choice." "A choice I regret." Catherine moved to the window, looked out at the street below. "I was scared, Lila. Terrified of being trapped in a marriage I didn't want, of spending my whole life being what Father needed me to be. So I ran. And now? Now I realize running doesn't solve anything. It just creates different problems." She turned to face them. "I went to Denver, tried to start over, but everywhere I went I was still Samuel Hart's daughter, still defined by what I was running from." "So you came back." Cole's voice was flat. "What do you want? Forgiveness? Absolution?" "I want to make things right." Lila laughed, sharp and bitter. "How exactly do you plan to do that? You can't unmarry us, Catherine. Can't undo the past 3 months." "I know, but I can tell the truth." Catherine's eyes went to Cole. "I never loved you. I know you knew that, but I need to say it out loud. What Father arranged, it was never about you and me. It was about land and power and building something that would make him feel important." "I knew that," Cole said. "But you agreed anyway." "Because I thought it was my duty, my responsibility to the ranch." He glanced at Lila. "Turned out to be the best decision I ever made, just not for the reasons I expected." Something flickered in Catherine's eyes. "You mean that?" "Yeah, I do." "You love her." It wasn't a question. The room went very quiet. Lila's heart hammered against her ribs. Cole didn't answer right away, and the silence stretched out painful and long. "I respect her," he said finally. "I trust her. She's my partner in every way that matters." "But you don't love her." "I don't know what love is supposed to feel like. All I know is that Lila showed up when you didn't, and she's been showing up every day since. That's worth more than love to me." Catherine looked between them, her expression unreadable. "You're both fooling yourselves." "Excuse me?" Lila's voice went cold. "You think you've built something real, but you're just making the best of a bad situation. Cole married you because I left him no choice, and you married him to save Father's ranch and prove you were worth something." Catherine's voice was gentle, almost pitying. "Neither of you chose each other. You just happened to be the ones left standing." The words hit like physical blows. Lila felt them land in her chest, in her throat, in the hollow place she'd been trying to fill with work and partnership, and the fragile thing that had been growing between her and Cole. "You don't know anything about our marriage," Lila said, but her voice shook. "I know you. I know you've spent your whole life being second choice. The daughter Father settled for when he couldn't have the one he wanted. The woman Cole married when he couldn't have me." Catherine stepped closer. How does it feel, Lila? Always being the replacement? Catherine, Cole started, his voice hard. No, let her speak, Lila cut him off. Let her say what she really came
This
here to
story
say.
was posted on the channel
Catherine's
west of
face
Betrayal.
shifted,
Please do not repost it in any form.
and for a moment Lila saw something ugly beneath the beautiful surface. I came to tell you the truth, that this marriage is built on convenience and desperation, and pretending otherwise is just sad. You deserve better than being someone's consolation prize. And what do you deserve? Lila asked quietly. You ran away from responsibility and came back expecting what? Sympathy? Admiration for your honesty? I expect nothing. I'm just telling you what you already know but won't admit. The door opened and Samuel Hart walked in without knocking. He looked between his daughters, reading the tension in the room. Catherine told you? He asked Lila. Told me what? About the annulment. The floor dropped out from under her. What annulment? Samuel pulled a document from his jacket. Catherine's been working with a lawyer in Denver. Turns out there are grounds to dissolve your marriage. The contracts all specified Catherine by name. The union was meant to be between the Bennett family and Catherine Hart specifically. Since she's back and willing to fulfill the original agreement, the marriage to you can be legally annulled. Lila stared at the papers in her father's hand. You can't be serious. I'm completely serious. Catherine marries Cole like we originally planned, and you're free to return to the Hart Ranch. Everything goes back to the way it should have been. The way it should have been? Lila's voice rose. I've spent 3 months building a life with Cole, building a partnership, making the Bennett Ranch profitable again, and you want to just erase all of that? You'll be compensated for your work. I don't want compensation. I want... She stopped, the words catching in her throat. What do you want? Catherine asked softly. Lila looked at Cole. He was staring at the document in Samuel's hand, his face carved from stone. She waited for him to say something, to protest, to refuse. He didn't. Cole? Her voice came out smaller than she wanted. He looked up, met her eyes, and she saw something broken in his expression. Maybe they're right. The words were a knife between her ribs. What? Maybe this has all been temporary. Maybe we were just fooling ourselves into thinking we could make something real out of a forced marriage. You don't mean that. Don't I? He took a step back. Look at the facts, Lila. You married me to save your father's ranch. I married you to spite mine. We've been partners, yeah, but partnership isn't the same as a real marriage. We were building something. We were surviving. There's a difference. Lila felt tears burning behind her eyes but refused to let them fall. Not here, not in front of Catherine and her father. Not when they were all watching her break apart. Fine, she said, her voice steady despite everything. If that's what you want. It's not about what I want. Yes, it is. It's always about what you want. What Father wants. What Catherine wants. She turned to her sister. You want Cole? Take him. I'm done being the consolation prize. She walked to the door, her legs somehow still working, even though everything inside her was screaming. Cole reached for her arm, but she jerked away. Lila, wait. No, you made your choice. Live with it. She left the room, left the hotel, untied her horse, and rode out of town without looking back. Behind her, she could hear Cole calling her name, but she didn't stop. Just kept riding, faster and faster, until the town disappeared behind her, and there was nothing but open land and the sound of hoofbeats. She didn't go back to the Bennett Ranch. Couldn't face it. Couldn't face the room she'd started to think of as hers, the office where she'd worked late into the night fixing problems that weren't hers to fix, the ranch she'd started to believe in. Instead, she rode to the western section, the land her father had deeded to her before the wedding. It wasn't much, just a few 100 acres with a creek running through it and grass that came up to her horse's knees. But it was hers, the one thing in her life that couldn't be taken away. She dismounted by the creek, let her horse drink, and sat down on a sun-warmed rock. The tears came then, hot and angry and unstoppable. She cried for the marriage that had been growing into something real until Catherine showed up and poisoned it with truth. Cried for the partnership she'd believed in, the respect she'd thought she'd earned. Cried for the stupid, foolish hope that maybe, just maybe, she could be someone's first choice instead of their backup plan. She cried until there were no tears left, until her throat was raw and her eyes burned and the sun had moved halfway across the sky. Then she heard hoofbeats again. Lila looked up, her heart jumping. But it wasn't Cole. It was Thomas Bennett. He dismounted slowly, his movements stiff with age and anger, walked over to where she sat and stood looking down at her with an expression she couldn't read. "So," he said, "Catherine's back. You heard. Whole town's heard by now. News like that travels fast." He sat down on a nearby rock, grunting with the effort. "Your father's already drawing up the annulment papers. Good for him. You just giving up? Just like that?" Lila looked at him sharply. "What do you want from me?" "I want to know if you're going to fight for what's yours." Cole made his choice. Did he? Or did he do what he always does? Fold under pressure and let other people make his decisions for him? He said the marriage was temporary, that we were just surviving. Thomas snorted. "My son is an idiot." Despite everything, Lila almost laughed. "You won't get an argument from me. He spent his whole life trying to be what I wanted instead of figuring out what he wants. And just when I thought he'd finally grown a spine and made a choice for himself, he goes and does this." Thomas looked at her. "You know what I saw when I watched you two at the ranch? I saw two people who actually worked together, who respected each other, who were building something real. It was built on lies. It was built on necessity. But that doesn't make it less real." He leaned forward. "My wife and I? We married for land, too. Her father wanted to expand his holdings. My father wanted access to water rights. We were 17 and didn't know each other from strangers. But we built a life anyway. Built a ranch, had 2 boys, 43 years together before she died." "Did you love her?" "Eventually, but first we had to figure out how to live together without killing each other. Love came later after we'd already committed to making it work." He stood up, joints cracking. "Point is, the foundation doesn't matter as much as what you build on it." "Then why are you here? Why aren't you talking to Cole about this?" "Because he's not the one sitting by a creek feeling sorry for himself. You are." The words stung, but they were fair. "What am I supposed to do?" Lila asked. "Go back and beg him to choose me over Catherine? Prove I'm worth keeping?" "No, you're supposed to go back and remind him that he already made his choice 3 months ago in a church. And everything that's happened since then, the work, the partnership, the respect, that wasn't an accident. That was both of you choosing each other every single day. He doesn't see it that way. Then make him see it." Thomas started toward his horse. "Or don't. Give up. Let Catherine waltz back in and take what you built. Let your father win. Let my son make the biggest mistake of his life because he's too stubborn to admit he cares about something." He mounted his horse, looked down at her one last time. "Your land grant," he said. "The western section. You know it's worth more than what your father paid you?" "What?" "There's a railroad survey coming through next year. They're planning a route that cuts right through this section. Once that happens, this land will be worth 10 times what it is now." Lila stared at him. "How do you know that?" "Because I've been trying to buy it for 2 years and your father kept refusing. Bet he didn't tell you that when he signed it over." Thomas smiled grimly. "You're not just a consolation prize, girl. You're the one who saw the value in things everyone else overlooked, including yourself." He rode off, leaving Lila sitting by the creek with her world turned upside down again. She sat there for another hour, thinking. About Catherine's words, about Cole's hesitation, about Thomas's challenge, about the woman she'd been 3 months ago, invisible, useful, accepting of being second choice, and the woman she'd become since then, someone who'd taken control of her life even when it was terrifying. Finally, she stood up, brushed off her skirt, climbed back on her horse, and rode toward the Bennett ranch. The sun was setting when she got there. Cole's horse was tied outside and lamplight glowed in the windows. She dismounted, tied up beside him, and walked to the door. She didn't knock, just walked in like she owned the place. Because she did. She was still legally married to Cole Bennett, and this was still her home. He was in the office, surrounded by ledgers. He looked up when she entered, and the relief on his face was so naked it hurt. "Lila—" "No," she said. "You don't get to talk yet. You get to listen." Closed his mouth. 3 months ago, we made a deal. Partners in a disaster of a marriage. And we kept that deal. We worked together. We fixed this ranch. We built something that works. She moved closer.
This
Somewhere
story
along
was
the way,
posted on
it
the
stopped
channel
being just a
West of
partnership
Betrayal.
and started being
Please
real.
do not
And
repost
you
it
know it.
in any form.
I know you know it because I've seen the way you look at me when you think I'm not watching, the way you wait for me at breakfast, the way you ask my opinion before making decisions, even though technically this is your ranch. Lila, I said no talking. She took a breath. Catherine's right about one thing. I have spent my whole life being second choice, and I told myself I was okay with it, told myself that being useful was enough. But then I married you, and you treated me like an equal, like someone worth listening to, like someone who mattered. And I started to believe I could be more than just the replacement sister. You were more... And then she came back and said all the things I've been afraid to admit to myself, that this marriage was never about me, that I'm just convenient, that you're settling. Her voice cracked. And you let her say it, stood there and let her tear apart everything we built. Cole stood up, started to move toward her. I was wrong. Yes, you were. But so was I. Lila held up a hand to stop him. I was wrong to think I needed you to choose me. Wrong to think I needed anyone's validation to know I'm worth something. I've been running my own life for 3 months now, making decisions, building value, and I don't need you or Cole or anyone else to tell me I matter. Then why are you here? Because I want to be. Not because I have to be. Not because my father forced me into it, or because I'm replacing Catherine, but because I choose this. I choose you. I choose us. She met his eyes. The question is whether you choose the same thing. Cole crossed the room in 3 strides. His hands came up to cup her face, and his eyes were dark and intense. I've been choosing you since the day Catherine ran, he said. I just didn't realize it until today when I almost lost you. And when your sister came back and I saw the 2 of you side by side, you want to know what I thought? What? I thought, thank God it's Lila I married and not her. Thank God I got the sister who shows up, who works, who doesn't quit when things get hard. His thumb brushed her cheekbone. You think you're second choice? You're the only choice I've ever made that mattered. But you said, I said a lot of stupid things because I was scared. Scared that maybe you were only here out of obligation, that the partnership was all we'd ever have. So when Catherine showed up with those annulment papers, part of me thought maybe you'd want out. Maybe you'd take the excuse to leave. I don't want out. I know that now. He leaned his forehead against hers. And I'm sorry I didn't say it in that hotel room. Sorry I let you walk out thinking I wanted this marriage to end. Do you? Want it to end? Hell no. He pulled back to look at her. I want to tell your father and mine and Catherine and the whole damn town that this marriage is real and it's staying that way. I want to rip up those annulment papers and keep building what we started. And I want to stop calling you my partner and start calling you something that matters more. What? My wife. My choice. The woman I... He stopped, swallowed hard. The woman I love. The words hung in the air between them. Lila felt her heart stop, restart, pound against her ribs. You love me? Yeah, I do. Probably have for weeks, but was too stubborn to admit it. He smiled, crooked and uncertain. That all right with you? Lila laughed, and it came out wet with tears. Yeah, it's all right with me. She kissed him, finally.
This
After
story
3
was
months of
posted
living
on the
together,
channel West
sleeping
of
in separate
Betrayal.
rooms,
Please do
dancing
not
around what was
repost it
growing
in any
between them,
form.
she kissed him. And he kissed her back like he'd been waiting for this, like he'd been holding himself back and finally had permission to let go. When they broke apart, both breathing hard, Cole rested his forehead against hers again. We need to deal with your father, he said, and mine, and Catherine and those annulment papers. Tomorrow, Lila said. Tonight, I just want to be here with you. All right, tomorrow. But tomorrow came faster than either of them expected, and it came with a crisis neither of them saw coming. They woke to the sound of wagon wheels and raised voices. Lila sat up first, her heart already racing before she was fully awake. Beside her, Cole was already moving, pulling on his pants, grabbing his shirt from where it had been thrown the night before. How many? She asked. Too many. They dressed quickly and went downstairs together. Through the front windows, Lila could see at least a dozen horses and 2 wagons pulled up in the yard. Thomas Bennett stood on the porch talking to someone she couldn't see, his voice carrying through the walls. "Don't care what papers you're waving around, Samuel. This is my property, and you're not welcome here." "Your property?" Her father's voice was sharp with anger. "Your son is married to my daughter under false pretenses. That makes this my business." Cole opened the front door and stepped out. Lila followed, and the conversation died as everyone turned to look. Samuel Hart stood at the base of the porch steps, flanked by 6 ranch hands and a man in a city suit carrying a leather case. Catherine stood slightly behind them, her face pale but determined. And behind them, more townspeople had gathered, drawn by the spectacle like moths to flame. "Father," Cole said, "what's this about?" "This," Thomas gestured to the crowd, "is your father-in-law trying to serve annulment papers at dawn like some kind of outlaw." The man in the suit cleared his throat. "I'm attorney William Prescott from Denver. I'm here on behalf of Miss Catherine Hart to formally deliver documents dissolving the marriage between Cole Bennett and Lila Hart on the grounds of contractual fraud and misrepresentation." "There was no fraud," Cole said flatly. "The marriage contract specifically named Catherine Hart as the bride. The substitution of Lila Hart constitutes a material breach of agreement." Prescott pulled papers from his case. "These documents have been reviewed by territorial court judges. The annulment is valid." "Like hell it is," Thomas growled. "Furthermore," Prescott continued, "as part of the original marriage contract, certain land transfers were contingent on the union between Cole Bennett and Catherine Hart. Since that union never occurred, those transfers are void." Cole went very still. "What land transfers?" "The northern section," Samuel said, his voice hard. 2,000 acres that borders both our properties. It was supposed to transfer to joint ownership upon marriage, but since the marriage was fraudulent, the land reverts to Hart ownership. That land has been Bennett land for 20 years, under a provisional deed that required the marriage alliance to be fulfilled. Samuel's smile was cold. Your father knew the terms. He agreed to them. Thomas's face had gone dark red. The marriage alliance was fulfilled. Cole married a Hart daughter. The wrong one. "A daughter is a daughter, not according to the contract." Prescott held up another document. "Section 12, paragraph 4, specifically identifies Catherine Elizabeth Hart by name. No substitutions permitted." Lila felt ice slide down her spine. She turned to Thomas. "You knew about this clause?" Thomas's jaw worked. It was standard language, boilerplate. "I didn't think it mattered which daughter, but it does matter," Samuel cut in. "Because now that Catherine is back and willing to honor the original agreement, the law is clear. Either Cole dissolves his fraudulent marriage and marries Catherine as intended, or the land transfers are void, and I take back what's mine." 2,000 acres, Cole said quietly. "That's a third of our grazing land." "Yes. Without it, we can't support the herd size we need. The ranch becomes unsustainable." "Yes." Lila watched her father's face and saw the calculation there. The cold satisfaction of a man who'd been planning this move for weeks, maybe months, since before Catherine even came back. "You knew," she said. "You knew about this clause all along, and you've been waiting for a chance to use it." "I've been protecting my interests," Samuel said, "just like I taught you to do. By destroying the ranch I've been working to save, by correcting a mistake that never should have happened." He looked at Cole. "You have a choice to make, son. Annul your marriage to Lila, marry Catherine like you were supposed to, and keep your land, or stay married to the wrong sister and watch your ranch die." The crowd had grown. Lila could see faces she recognized, shopkeepers, ranchers, ranch hands, all watching this disaster unfold like it was entertainment, like her marriage and her life were just another show for their amusement. "There's a third option," Thomas said, his voice dangerous. "What's that?" "I refuse the annulment. Cole stays married to Lila, and we go to war over that land in every court in the territory." "You'll lose." "Maybe, but I'll tie it up in litigation for years, and in the meantime, you won't have access to it either." Thomas smiled without humor. "We'll both bleed money on lawyers while that land sits unused. Is that what you want?" Samuel's
This
expression
story
didn't
was
change,
posted on the
but
channel
Lila saw
west
the
of
flicker of
Betrayal.
calculation in
Please
his
do not
eyes.
repost
He
it
hadn't
in any
expected
form.
Thomas to fight this hard. "Gentlemen," Prescott interjected smoothly, "there's no need for litigation. The law is clear." "The law is whatever we can afford to make it," Thomas shot back, "and I've got deeper pockets than you think." "Actually," a new voice said from the edge of the crowd, "you don't." Everyone turned. A woman in traveling clothes stepped forward, flanked by two men Lila didn't recognize. She was maybe 40, with steel gray hair and sharp eyes that took in the scene with cool assessment. "Who the hell are you?" Thomas demanded. "Margaret Chen, attorney from San Francisco." She pulled papers from her bag. "I represent the Territorial Land Office, and I'm here to inform you that the northern section you're all fighting over doesn't belong to either of you." The silence that fell was absolute. "That's impossible," Samuel said. "I have the deed." "You have a provisional deed that was never properly filed with the Territorial Office. The land transfer you're claiming was contingent on a marriage that, according to your own lawyer's argument, never legally occurred, which means the original land grant reverts to territorial ownership." Thomas stared at her. "You're saying the government is taking my land?" "I'm saying the land was never yours to begin with. The original grant was conditional, and those conditions weren't met." Margaret pulled out more papers. "Furthermore, there are irregularities in several other land transfers between the Hart and Bennett families going back 15 years. Transfers that may have involved coercion, misrepresentation, or outright fraud." "That's a lie," Samuel said, but his voice had lost its certainty. "Is it? Because I have testimony from 3 former ranch hands who say otherwise. Men who witnessed your late wife being pressured into signing over her family's land shortly before her death. Land that coincidentally included water rights you needed." Thomas's face had gone from red to white. "Emily's land was transferred under duress while she was gravely ill, which makes the transfer potentially void." Margaret looked between the two men. "Gentlemen, you've both been playing fast and loose with land law for 2 decades, building your empires on shaky legal ground and hoping no one would look too closely. Well, someone looked." Lila felt the world tilt sideways. Her mother's land. She died when Lila and Catherine were born, and Samuel had always claimed the land transfers had been settled before her death. But if that was a lie— "Who sent you?" Cole asked quietly. Margaret's eyes shifted to him. "Someone who's been watching this valley for a long time. Someone who has a vested interest in seeing these land disputes resolved properly." "My brother," Thomas said suddenly. "James. This is his doing." "Your brother is still at school back east," Cole said. "Is he?" Margaret smiled. "James Bennett graduated from law school 3 months ago, top of his class, and he's been working with the Territorial Office to clean up exactly this kind of land fraud." "That little—" Thomas caught himself. "He's trying to destroy his own family? He's trying to make sure the law is followed, even when it's inconvenient." Margaret turned to address the whole crowd. "The territorial governor has ordered a full investigation into land holdings in this valley. Every deed, every transfer, every provisional grant. And until that investigation is complete, all contested lands are frozen." "How long will that take?" Samuel demanded. 6 months. Maybe a year." "We can't wait a year."
This story was
"Then you
posted
shouldn't
on the
have built
channel
your
west of
fortunes on
Betrayal.
fraud."
Please do not
Margaret's voice was
repost
sharp.
it in any form.
"Both of you have been using your children as pawns in your land games for too long, forcing marriages, breaking promises, destroying lives. Well, it's over. The Territorial Office is taking control." She handed papers to both Thomas and Samuel. They took them with hands that shook. Whether from anger or fear, Lila couldn't tell. "There will be a formal hearing in 30 days, Margaret continued. "Until then, all parties are ordered to maintain current land usage and refrain from any new transfers or agreements. That includes annulments, marriages, or any other legal maneuvers designed to circumvent this investigation." She looked directly at Prescott. "Your annulment papers are void. The marriage between Cole Bennett and Lila Hart stands until the territorial investigation is complete." "You can't do this," Samuel said, but it sounded hollow. "I already have. Any questions can be directed to the governor's office in Denver." Margaret nodded to her companions and they started back toward their horses. The crowd erupted in whispers and speculation. This was even better than they'd hoped for. Not just a marriage scandal, but a full territorial investigation into the valley's most powerful families. Lila watched her father's face cycle through emotions: shock, rage, fear, calculation. He was already trying to figure out how to spin this, how to protect himself. Catherine stood frozen, her earlier confidence shattered. She looked small suddenly, younger, like the reality of what she'd set in motion had finally caught up with her. Thomas turned to Cole, his expression unreadable. "My own son. He turned on his own family. Or maybe he turned on corruption," Cole said quietly. "There's a difference." "Don't you dare take his side." "I'm not taking anyone's side. I'm just saying maybe James saw something wrong and decided to fix it." Cole looked at his father. "Did you coerce Emily Hart into signing over her land?" "She was dying." "That's not what I asked." Thomas's silence was answer enough. Cole's jaw tightened. "Then maybe we deserve this investigation." "You ungrateful!" Thomas raised his hand like he might actually strike his son. Samuel's ranch hands shifted, hands moving to weapons. The crowd pressed closer, eager to see violence. "Stop!" Lila's voice cut through the tension. "All of you, just stop." Everyone turned to look at her. She stepped forward, putting herself between Cole and his father. "This whole valley has been watching our families tear each other apart for entertainment, watching my sister run away, watching me marry the wrong man, watching fathers and sons fight over land and power and pride." She looked around at all the faces. "Well, I'm done being your show." "Lila," Samuel started. "No, I'm talking now, and you're going to listen." She turned to face her father. "You spent my whole life telling me I wasn't good enough, that I wasn't Catherine, that I was useful but not valuable. And I believed you. Right up until the moment I walked down that aisle in her place and realized I had a choice. I could keep being what you wanted, or I could be something else. You married Cole because I forced you. I married Cole because the alternative was losing everything. But I stayed married to him because I chose to. Because we built something real together. Something better than whatever political alliance you and Thomas cooked up." She looked at Cole, saw him watching her with an expression that made her chest tight. "And no annulment, no investigation, no territorial decree is going to change that." She turned back to the crowd. "So you can all go home now. The show's over. Whatever happens with the land investigation, whatever the territorial office decides, Cole and I are staying married. Not because we have to, because we want to." "You can't make that decision without considering the consequences," Thomas said. "Watch me. If the land transfers are voided, this ranch won't survive. Then we'll figure it out, together." She looked at Cole. "Right?" He moved to stand beside her, his hand finding hers. "Right." Samuel's face had gone hard as stone. "You're making a mistake, Lila." "Probably, but it's my mistake to make. If you walk away from this family..." "I'm not walking away. You forced me out the moment you decided I wasn't worth keeping around unless I was useful." She squeezed Cole's hand. "I'm just done trying to earn something I should have had from the beginning." Catherine stepped forward then, her face pale. "Lila, I'm sorry. I didn't know about the land clause. Didn't know Father was planning..." "Yes, you did." Lila's voice was flat. "Maybe not all the details, but you knew he was up to something. You came back because he asked you to, not because you wanted to make things right." "That's not true, isn't it? You ran away 3 months ago to escape exactly this kind of manipulation. But the moment Father needed you to play a role, you came running back." Lila shook her head. "I don't blame you for running, Catherine. I blame you for coming back and trying to destroy what I built in your absence." Catherine's eyes filled with tears. Real tears, Lila thought. Maybe the first real emotion she'd shown since returning. "I didn't mean..." "I know. You never mean to hurt anyone, but you do it anyway because you only think about yourself." Lila's voice softened slightly. "Go back to Denver, Catherine. Find whatever life you were trying to build there, but leave mine alone." Catherine looked at their father, then back at Lila. For a moment, Lila thought she might argue, might fight back, but Catherine just nodded, turned, and walked away through the crowd. Samuel watched his eldest daughter leave, his expression unreadable. Then he turned that cold gaze on Lila. "You'll regret this." "Maybe, but at least I'll regret my own choices instead of yours." He climbed into his wagon without another word. His ranch hands followed, and within minutes the Hart contingent was riding away down the valley road. Thomas stood on the porch, watching his rival leave. Then he turned to Cole. "This investigation is going to destroy us." "It might. And you're just going to let it happen. If we broke the law, we should face the consequences." Cole's hand was still holding Lila's. "But we'll face them honestly. No more schemes, no more using people as pawns." "You sound like your brother." "Good." Thomas stared at his son for a long moment. Then, surprisingly, he laughed. It was a rough sound, bitter, but genuine. "You really are done taking orders from me, aren't you?" "Yeah, I am." "About damn time." Thomas moved toward his horse. "For what it's worth, your mother would be proud. She always said you had more backbone than you let on." "Where are you going?" "To find a lawyer who isn't crooked and figure out how to survive this investigation without going to prison." He mounted his horse, looked down at them both. "You two better hope that western section your father gave you is worth what I think it is, because you might be living on it when this is all over." He rode off, leaving Cole and Lila standing on the porch with the remaining townspeople still watching from the yard. "Show's over," Cole called out. "Everyone go home." They dispersed slowly, reluctantly, still talking among themselves. The scandal would be discussed in every saloon and general store for months, but at least they were leaving. Mrs. Chen appeared in the doorway with 2 cups of coffee. "Thought you might need these," she said, her face carefully neutral. "Thank you," Lila said, taking both cups and handing one to Cole. They stood there in silence, watching the last of the crowd disappear down the road. The sun was fully up now, the valley bright and clear. It should have felt like a victory, like they'd stood their ground and won. Instead, it just felt exhausting. "We might lose everything," Cole said quietly. "I know. The ranch, the land, everything our family's built. I know." "And you're still staying?" Lila looked at him, saw the doubt and fear and hope all mixed together in his expression. Saw the man she'd married out of desperation and learned to love through partnership and shared struggle. "I told you already, I chose this. I chose you." "Oh, even if it means starting over with nothing?" "We won't have nothing. We'll have that western section, and whatever else we can salvage, and each other." She set down her coffee cup, turned to face him fully. "That's more than I had 3 months ago." Cole pulled her close, wrapped his arms around her. She buried her face in his chest and let herself just exist there for a moment. No crowds watching, no fathers making demands, no sisters causing chaos. Just them. "I love you," he said into her hair. "I should have said it first thing this morning, should have said it in front of everyone." "You did say it, last night." "I mean in front of the town, in front of your father and mine. I should have stood there and told everyone that you're not a replacement or a consolation prize. You're the best decision I ever made." "You can tell them later. I'm telling you now." He pulled back to look at her face. "Lila Hart Bennett, you're stubborn and practical, and you laugh at the worst possible moments, and you made me fall in love with you without even trying. And I don't care what happens with the investigation or the land or anything else. As long as I have you, I can handle it." She kissed him. Right there on the porch in the bright morning sun where anyone riding past could see them. And when she pulled back, she was smiling. "We should probably figure out what to do next," she said. "Probably. Starting with reading whatever legal documents Margaret Chen left us."
This story was posted
then-
on the channel west
And
of
then we go to
Betrayal.
town and make a
Please
very
do not
public, very
repost it
deliberate
in any
scene
form.
where you announce to everyone that our marriage is real and permanent, and they can all stop speculating. Cole raised an eyebrow. "You want me to make a scene?" "I want you to claim what's yours, publicly, loudly, so there's no question in anyone's mind. The territorial law says we can't annul until the investigation is over. I don't mean legally, I mean socially. I want everyone in this valley to know that you chose me. Not because Catherine ran away, not because your father forced you, because you wanted to." Understanding dawned in his eyes. "You want to rewrite the story. I want to tell the truth, the real truth. Not the version everyone's been gossiping about." He considered this, then nodded. "All right, let's go to town." They rode into town an hour later, both dressed in their best clothes. Not wedding clothes. Lila had burned that dress in the fireplace weeks ago. but the kind of formal attire you wore when you wanted to be taken seriously. The saloon was full at midday, packed with men drinking and talking about the morning's drama. Conversations died when Cole and Lila walked in. Cole went straight to the bar, ordered 2 whiskeys, and turned to face the room. "I've got something to say, and you're all going to listen." The saloon went completely silent. 3 months ago, I married Lila Hart in a church full of people who expected someone else. And for 3 months, this town has been talking about how I got stuck with the wrong sister, how my marriage is a sham, how I'm just making the best of a bad situation. He picked up one of the whiskeys, held it without drinking. "Here's the truth. Lila is the best thing that ever happened to me. She's smarter than me, tougher than me, and she saved my ranch from bankruptcy while I was too proud to admit we were failing. She didn't have to do any of that. Could have just sat in the house and collected her land grant and waited for the whole thing to fall apart. But she didn't. She worked. She fought. She made something real out of a disaster." He looked at Lila, and the expression on his face made her chest tight. "So yeah, I didn't choose her first. Catherine ran away and left me standing at that altar looking like a fool. But Lila walked down that aisle and gave me a second chance. And every day since then, I've chosen her partnership, chosen her honesty, chosen her." He raised his glass. "And I'll keep choosing her. Investigation or no investigation, land or no land, ranch or no ranch. She's my wife. Not by accident, by choice." He drank the whiskey in one swallow, set the glass down hard on the bar. The saloon was absolutely silent. Then someone in the back started clapping, then another, and another, until half the room was applauding and the other half was too stunned to do anything but stare. Lila felt tears burning behind her eyes. Not sad tears. Something else. Something that felt like vindication and relief and love, all mixed together. She crossed to Cole, took the second whiskey from the bar, and raised it to the room. "And I choose him, the stubborn rancher who married me despite his father and ended up being the best partner I could have asked for." She drank, set down her glass beside his. "So you can all stop gossiping now. The story's over. We're writing a new one." They walked out of the saloon together, hand in hand, while the whole town watched. And for the first time since that disastrous wedding day, Lila felt like she was exactly where she belonged. Not as someone's second choice, as someone's only choice. The ride back to the ranch felt different. Lighter somehow, despite everything hanging over their heads. Cole kept glancing at Lila like he was making sure she was real, that she hadn't disappeared while he wasn't looking. "What?" she asked finally. "Nothing, just that was something back there." "You mean you making a speech in a saloon full of drunk cowboys?" "I mean you standing beside me while I did it." He reached over and took her hand. Most women would have been embarrassed. "I'm not most women." "No," he agreed. "You're really not." They were still a mile from the ranch when they saw the rider coming fast from the opposite direction. Cole's hand went to the rifle on his saddle, but as the rider got closer, Lila recognized him. "That's one of your father's hands," she said. The rider pulled up hard, his horse breathing heavy. "Mr. Bennett, there's been an incident." Cole's face went tight. "What kind of incident?" "Fire. At the Hart Ranch. Big one. Started about an hour ago in the main barn." Lila's heart stopped. "My father, he's alive. But the barn's a total loss. Most of the horses got out, but the feed stores are gone. Equipment, too." "How did it start?" Cole asked. The ranch hand hesitated. "Sheriff says it looks deliberate. Someone soaked the hay in kerosene." The words hung in the air. Lila looked at Cole and saw her own thoughts reflected in his face. Someone had set that fire, and there was only one person angry enough, desperate enough to do something that reckless. "Thomas," she said quietly, "we don't know that. Who else would it be? He just found out he's under investigation, that he might lose everything. And my father's the one who brought Catherine back, who started this whole mess." She turned her horse. "I have to go." "Lila, wait." "He's still my father, Cole. Whatever else he is, he's still my father." Cole caught her reins. "Then we go together." They rode hard, the ranch hand keeping pace beside them. By the time they reached the Hart Ranch, smoke was still rising from the ruins of the barn, thick and black against the afternoon sky. The whole valley would be able to see it. Another spectacle, another disaster for people to talk about. Samuel Hart stood in the yard surrounded by his remaining ranch hands watching the smoldering wreckage. His face was streaked with soot, his clothes singed in places. When he saw Lila, something flickered in his expression. Relief, maybe, or surprise that she'd come. "Lila," he said, "you didn't need to—" "Yes, I did." She dismounted, walked over to him. Up close, she could see he was shaking, from shock or rage, or both. "Are you hurt?" "No. Got everyone out before it spread. Lost 6 horses and everything stored inside, but no one died." He looked at Cole. "Your father did this." "You don't know that." "Who else?" "He threatened me this morning, said I'd regret crossing him." "Thomas Bennett doesn't burn barns," Cole said, but his voice lacked conviction. "He fights in courtrooms, not with arson." "Maybe he's tired of courts." Samuel's jaw worked. "Or maybe he's desperate enough to try something new." The sheriff arrived then, a heavy-set man named Morrison who'd been keeping the peace in this valley for 20 years. He took statements from everyone, examined the burn patterns, and found the kerosene cans hidden behind the water trough. "This was planned," he said, showing them the evidence. "Someone wanted this barn to burn fast and hot, wanted to make sure it couldn't be saved." "Thomas Bennett," Samuel said. "I'll need proof before I arrest anyone, Mr. Hart. Even someone as powerful as Thomas Bennett. The proof is right there. That's evidence of arson, not evidence of who did it." Morrison looked between Samuel and Cole. "But I'll be having a conversation with Mr. Bennett Sr. See where he was this afternoon." He left to do exactly that, and Samuel turned back to the ruins of his barn. Lila watched her father's shoulders sag, saw the fight go out of him for the first time in her life. 30 years, he said quietly. "I built this place for 30 years, and someone destroyed a piece of it in an hour." "You can rebuild," Lila said. "With what money?" "The investigation froze my assets. I can't get credit, can't sell land, can't do anything until it's resolved." He laughed bitterly. "I spent so long trying to protect what I built that I forgot to make sure the foundation was solid." "Father, you were right. What you said this morning. I did force you out, used you when you were convenient and discarded you when you weren't." He looked at her finally. "Your mother would be ashamed of what I've become." The admission hung in the air between them. Lila had spent her whole life wanting her father to see her, to acknowledge her worth. But now that he was doing it, she found it didn't feel the way she'd imagined. It just felt sad. "What happened to Mother's land?" she asked. "The transfers Thomas mentioned, were they real?" Samuel's silence was answer enough. "She was dying," he said finally. "Knew she wouldn't survive the birth, and I needed those water rights to keep the ranch viable. So I asked her to sign the papers." Asked or pressured? "Both, probably. I don't remember anymore. It was 23 years ago, and I was desperate and scared and angry that she was leaving me." He turned to face the smoking ruins again. "I've been desperate and scared and angry ever since, just better at hiding it." Cole shifted beside Lila, uncomfortable with this raw honesty. But he didn't leave, just stood there as witness to something that needed to be witnessed. "The investigation," Samuel said. "When they dig into those transfers, they're going to find irregularities. Questions about Emily's mental state when she signed, whether she was coerced, and I don't
This
have good
story was
answers."
posted on the channel
So what are you
west of
going to do?
Betrayal. Please
Tell
do
the
not
truth, I
repost
suppose.
it in any
Face
form.
whatever consequences come. He looked at Lila. "And hope my daughter doesn't hate me too much to visit me if I end up in prison." "I don't hate you." "You should." "Probably. But I don't have the energy for it anymore." She took a breath. "I'll help you rebuild the barn. Cole and I both will. But after that, you and I need to establish some boundaries. About the ranch, about my life, about what I'm willing to do for this family, and what I'm not." Samuel nodded slowly. "That's fair. And you leave Cole alone. Leave our marriage alone. No more schemes, no more manipulation, no more using people as chess pieces." "All right. I mean it, Father. This is your last chance. You cross me again and I'm done. Completely done." "I understand." She wanted to believe him. Wanted to think that maybe, finally, her father had learned something from all this chaos. But she'd been disappointed too many times to count on it. They stayed until the fire was completely out, helping where they could. Then Cole and Lila rode back to the Bennett ranch as the sun was setting, both exhausted and covered in soot. Mrs. Chen met them at the door with water for washing and news. Sheriff came by while you were gone, said Mr. Thomas has an alibi for this afternoon. Was in town at the bank with witnesses. So he didn't set the fire, Lila said. Doesn't mean he didn't hire someone to do it, Cole pointed out. Sheriff's looking into that too. But without proof, Mrs. Chen shrugged. Men like Thomas Bennett don't get their hands dirty. They pay others to do it. Cole washed his face, stared at his reflection in the basin. My father's a lot of things, but I didn't think he'd cross this line. People do desperate things when they're cornered, Lila said. Yeah, they do. That night, they lay in bed, unable to sleep, both staring at the ceiling and thinking about fires and investigations and the mess their families had created. What if we just left? Cole said suddenly. Lila turned to look at him. What? Left the valley, sold what we could, took your western section, and started over somewhere else. Colorado, maybe. Or Montana. Run away, you mean? Walk away. There's a difference. Is there? Catherine ran away, and look how that turned out. Catherine ran from responsibility. I'm talking about walking away from other people's mistakes. He rolled onto his side to face her. We could build something new, something that's ours from the ground up. No tainted land transfers, no family politics, no investigation hanging over our heads. It was tempting, more tempting than it should have been. But Lila shook her head. If we run now, we prove everyone right. That our marriage was just convenience. That we can't handle the hard parts. Who cares what they think? I do. Not because I need their approval, but because I need to know we stayed and fought for what we built. That we didn't just give up when things got complicated. Cole was quiet for a long moment. You're right. I know you're right. I'm tired of fighting. Me too, but we're almost through it. The investigation will finish, the truth will come out, and we'll deal with whatever comes after. And if what comes after is prison for both our fathers and losing most of our land, then we still have each other. And that western section, and whatever we can build from there. She reached for his hand in the darkness. It's enough, Cole. As long as we're together, it's enough. He pulled her close, buried his face in her hair. When did you get so optimistic? I'm not optimistic. I'm just too stubborn to quit. Same thing, probably. They fell asleep like that, tangled together, holding on to each other while the world burned and rebuilt around them. The territorial investigation took 4 months, not the 6 Margaret Chen had predicted. 4 months of lawyers and depositions and land surveys. 4 months of watching their fathers squirm under scrutiny. 4 months of waiting to see what would survive when the dust settled. The verdict came in late October, delivered by Margaret Chen herself, in a formal hearing that packed the town courthouse with spectators. After extensive review of land transfers, contracts, and witness testimony, she announced, reading from an official document, the territorial office has reached the following conclusions. The room went silent. The land transfer involving Emily Hart's family holdings occurred under questionable circumstances. However, given the passage of time and the death of the primary party, the transfer is allowed to stand with a significant caveat. 20% of the proceeds from that land must be placed in trust for Emily Hart's surviving children, Lila and Catherine Hart. Lila sat up straighter. That was more than she'd expected. The northern section disputed between the Hart and Bennett families is ruled to be improperly transferred and reverts to territorial ownership. However, given both families' long-standing use of the land, it will be available for lease at fair market rates to whichever party can demonstrate better stewardship and financial stability. Samuel and Thomas both looked ready to argue, but Margaret continued before they could speak. Furthermore, several additional transfers between the families over the past 20 years are ruled invalid due to fraud, coercion, or improper documentation. The affected lands will be reassessed and redistributed based on original territorial grants. That could take years, someone in the crowd muttered. It will take as long as necessary to do it properly. Margaret looked up from her papers. However, there is one bright spot in all this mess. She pulled out a different document and Lila saw her father's face go pale. The western section, deeded to Lila Hart prior to her marriage, has been confirmed as legally sound and properly transferred. Mrs. Lila Bennett now owns that land outright, free and clear. And given the recent railroad survey confirming a route through that section, the value has increased substantially. Murmurs rippled through the courthouse. Cole's hand found Lila's under the table, squeezed tight. How substantially? Thomas asked. Enough that Mrs. Bennett could, if she chose, purchase the lease rights to the northern section and still have capital left over for ranch operations. Margaret smiled slightly. Congratulations, Mrs. Bennett. You're now the wealthiest landowner in this valley. The room erupted. Lila sat frozen, trying to process what she'd just heard. The western section, the throwaway piece of land her father had given her as consolation for marrying Cole, was worth a fortune. Enough to save both ranches. Enough to change everything. Samuel was staring at her with an expression she couldn't read. Thomas looked like he'd been punched. And Cole was smiling. You did it, he said quietly. You actually did it. I didn't do anything. It was luck. It was you seeing value where everyone else saw scraps. Same thing you've been doing since the day we got married. Margaret continued reading through additional findings, but Lila barely heard them. Her mind was racing through possibilities, calculations, decisions that needed to be made. When the hearing finally ended, both their fathers approached together, the first time Lila had seen them civil to each other in months. Lila, Samuel said, can we talk? About what? About the northern section. If you're planning to bid for the lease rights, I am. Then I'd like to propose a partnership. The Hart Ranch and the Bennett Ranch operating the land jointly, splitting costs and profits. Thomas cleared his throat. I'd like to propose the same arrangement. Lila looked between them. These two men who'd spent decades using their children as pawns, fighting over land and power and pride. Who'd created the mess that had forced her into a marriage that somehow turned into the best thing that ever happened to her. No, she said. Samuel blinked. No? I'll lease the northern section myself. Run it as part of the Bennett Ranch operation. And I'll hire workers from both your ranches to manage it. Workers, not you. You two have proven you can't be trusted with joint operations. Lila, Thomas started, I'll pay fair wages and provide fair terms. Better than either of you would have offered. And the profits stay with me and Cole. She crossed her arms. You want access to that land? You negotiate with me, on my terms. And if you try to manipulate or scheme or use people the way you have been, I cut you off entirely. The two older men stared at her. Then, surprisingly, Samuel laughed. You really are my daughter. No, Lila said quietly. I'm my mother's daughter. And it's about time someone in this family remembered what that means. She walked away, leaving them standing there. Cole caught up with her outside the courthouse where the whole town was milling about, buzzing with news of the investigation results. That was brutal, he said. They deserved it. I'm not disagreeing. Just remind me never to get on your bad side. She turned to face him, saw the pride and love and slight fear in his expression, and smiled. You're safe. You're on my good side permanently. Yeah? Yeah. She took his hand. Come on, let's go home. They walked through town together, past all the people who'd watched their marriage start as a disaster and were watching it now as something else entirely.
This story was
Past
posted on the
saloon where
channel
Cole had
west
made
of
his
Betrayal.
speech.
Please
Past the
do not
hotel where
repost
Catherine
it
had
in
tried
any
to
form.
destroy everything. Past the church where it had all begun. Home was the Bennett Ranch, but it felt different now. Felt like theirs in a way it hadn't before. Like they'd earned it through survival and stubbornness and choosing each other when it would have been easier to quit. Mrs. Chen met them at the door with tea and a knowing smile. The whole town's talking about you, she said. Let them talk, Lila said. They're saying you outmaneuvered both your fathers, that you're going to run this valley within 5 years. I don't want to run the valley. I just want to run my own life. Same thing, probably. Mrs. Chen poured the tea. Your mother would be proud. She always said women in this valley needed to stop letting men make all the decisions. Lila froze, cup halfway to her lips. You knew my mother? Everyone knew Emily Hart. She was the smartest woman in 3 territories. Your father knew it too, which is why he married her, and why he pressured her to sign over that land when she was dying. He knew without her he'd never manage the ranch properly. Why didn't anyone tell me this? Because Samuel Hart spent 20 years making sure everyone forgot Emily was the real power behind the Hart Ranch. He couldn't stand the idea that he'd needed her. Mrs. Chen smiled softly. But you're just like her, smart, stubborn, practical. She would have loved watching you take control. Cole squeezed Lila's shoulder. I'm going to check on the herd. Give you some time. He left them alone. Lila sat with Mrs. Chen and learned about her mother, the woman she'd never known but had apparently inherited more from than just land. That night, Lila and Cole sat on the porch watching the sun set over the valley. The light turned everything gold and red, painting the grasslands in shades of fire. I've been thinking, Cole said. Dangerous habit. About what you said. About your mother. About how your father spent 20 years trying to erase her contributions. He turned to look at her. I don't want that for us. Don't want anyone forgetting that you're the reason this ranch survived. The reason any of this worked. No one's going to forget. The whole valley knows I'm the one who saved your finances. I want it official, legal. He pulled papers from his pocket, documents he must have been carrying all day. I had these drawn up after the hearing. They transfer half ownership of the Bennett Ranch to you, not as my wife, as my equal partner. Lila stared at the papers. Cole, you've earned it, more than earned it. And I want everyone to know, our children someday, the whole territory, that Lila Bennett wasn't just a replacement bride or a convenient solution. She was the partner who built this ranch into something worth having. She took the papers with hands that shook slightly. Read through the legal language that made her half owner of everything. It was more than she'd ever asked for, more than she'd imagined when she walked down that aisle in her sister's dress. Are you sure? She asked. I've never been more sure of anything. She signed the papers right there on the porch, using his back as a writing surface. When it was done, when they both had copies that would be filed with the territorial office, Cole kissed her like it was their wedding day all over again. Only this time, it was real, chosen, built on truth instead of desperation. I love you, he said against her mouth. I love you too. They stayed out there until the stars came out, talking about plans for the ranch, for the northern section, for the future they were building together. And when they finally went inside, it was to the bedroom they'd been sharing for months now, the room that had been prepared for someone else but had become theirs. Cole locked the door behind them, a question in his eyes. They'd been married for 4 months, had been sleeping in the same bed for 2, but there was still a line they hadn't crossed, a final step they hadn't taken. Tonight? He asked quietly. Lila thought about the girl she'd been 4 months ago, invisible, useful, accepting of second place, and the woman she'd become, powerful, chosen, equal partner in everything that mattered. Tonight, she agreed. He crossed to her slowly, giving her time to change her mind. But she didn't want to change her mind. She wanted this, wanted him, wanted to claim this last piece of their marriage and make it real in every possible way. His hands were gentle, unlacing her dress with the patience of a man who'd waited long enough and could wait a little longer if needed. But she didn't make him wait, just helped him with the buttons and laces until they were both standing there in the lamplight with nothing between them. You're beautiful, he said, and it didn't sound like a line, just sounded like truth. You're not so bad yourself. He laughed, lifted her, carried her to the bed that was finally, completely theirs. And when he laid her down and covered her body with his, when they came together in the oldest way two people could, Lila felt something shift and settle inside her chest. This was what choosing felt like. This was what being chosen felt like. Not perfect, not smooth, but real and honest and built on a foundation that would last. Afterward, they lay tangled together in sheets that smelled like lavender and wood smoke, both too exhausted to move but too content to sleep. No regrets? Cole asked, his fingers tracing patterns on her shoulder. Not a single one. Not even about Catherine, about how this all started? Lila thought about her sister, probably back in Denver by now, building whatever life she'd run away to find. Thought about the disaster of a wedding that had somehow led her here. If Catherine hadn't run, I never would have walked down that aisle, never would have married you, never would have found out I was capable of more than keeping books and staying invisible. She shifted to look at him. So no, No regrets. Good. Because I'm keeping you. You better. They fell asleep like that, holding each other while the valley settled into darkness around them. 6 months later, Lila stood in what used to be the northern section and watched workers putting up fence posts under her direction. The lease had gone through, the railroad contract was signed, and the Bennett Ranch was turning profits that made even the old-timers nod with respect. Cole rode up on his horse, dismounted, came to stand beside her. "Looking good," he said. "It's coming together." "I meant you." She glanced down. 4 months pregnant and just starting to show. They'd told Mrs. Chen and their fathers, but no one else yet. Wanted to keep it private a little longer, this piece of good news that belonged just to them. "How are you feeling?" he asked. "Tired? Hungry? Happy?" She leaned against him. Terrified. Of what? Of being a mother, of raising a child in this valley with all its history and complications. She took a breath. Of somehow turning into my father and using this child the way he used Catherine and me. You won't. How do you know? Because you've spent 4 months proving you're nothing like him. Because you see people as people, not as pieces on a board. He turned her to face him. Because you're you, and that's enough. She wanted to believe him. Most days she did. But there were still moments when she wondered if she'd really escaped her father's shadow or if she was just better at hiding in it. "We should tell people soon," Cole said, "before it becomes obvious. Next week, after the railroad ceremony." The territorial governor was coming to formally mark the start of construction. It would be a big event, lots of important people, a good time to make announcements. "All right, next week." A rider appeared on the ridge, one of the ranch hands with news. Cole went to meet him while Lila stayed with the fence crew, checking measurements and making notes in her ledger. This was her life now. Ranch work and pregnancy and partnership with a man she'd married in desperation and learned to love through choice. It wasn't the life she'd imagined as a girl. It was better. Cole came back looking troubled. "What is it?" "Catherine's back." Lila's stomach dropped. "In town?" "At the Hart Ranch. Showed up this morning asking to see you." "Did she say what she wants?" "No. But your father sent word that it's important." Lila looked at the fence line, at the workers waiting for her direction, at the life she'd built that her sister had tried to destroy once already. "Do you want me to tell her no?" Cole asked. "No. I'll see her." She handed him the ledger. "But you're coming with me." "Wouldn't have it any other way." They rode to the Hart Ranch together. The new barn was half built, rising from the ashes of the old one. Samuel was in the yard supervising construction, and he looked up when they arrived. "She's in the house," he said. "Been waiting for an hour." "What does she want?" "She wouldn't say, just that she needed to talk to you." He paused. "She looks different, Lila. Thinner, tired." They found Catherine in the sitting room, and Samuel was right. She looked different. The polish was gone. The confidence. She looked like someone who'd been worn down by life and was trying to figure out how to rebuild. "Lila," she said, standing, "thank you for seeing me." "What do you want, Catherine?" "To apologize. Really apologize, not the half-hearted version I gave you before." She twisted her hands together. "I came back 6 months ago thinking I could fix my mistakes by undoing yours. Thought if I could just reset everything to how it was supposed to be, I'd feel less guilty about running. And now?
This story
Now
was
I realize
posted
I
on the
made
channel
everything
West
worse.
of
Hurt
Betrayal.
you, hurt
Please
Cole.
do not repost
Nearly
it in
destroyed
any
both our
form.
families' futures. Catherine's eyes were bright with unshed tears. I don't expect forgiveness. I just wanted you to know I understand what I did, and that I'm sorry. Lila studied her sister, looking for manipulation or ulterior motives. But all she saw was someone genuinely broken by their own choices. What happened in Denver? She asked. I tried to start over. Got a job in a dress shop, met a man, thought maybe I could build something real, but I kept sabotaging it, kept running when things got hard, kept being the person Father raised me to be instead of the person I wanted to be. Catherine wiped her eyes. And I realized the problem wasn't Denver or the valley or the man I was with. It was me. I don't know how to stay. Don't know how to commit to anything. So you came back here to face what I ran from. to try to learn from you how to be brave enough to stay. Cole shifted beside Lila, but she held up a hand. This was her choice to make. I forgive you, she said finally. Catherine blinked. What? I forgive you, not because what you did was okay, or because we're going to be close again, but because holding on to anger takes energy I don't have. Lila took a breath. You made choices that hurt people. Now you have to live with those choices and figure out how to be better. That's your work to do, not mine. I don't know how. Start by being honest with yourself and everyone else. Stop running when things get complicated. Stop expecting other people to fix your mistakes. She paused. And maybe talk to someone, a professional, someone who can help you figure out why you keep sabotaging yourself. Catherine nodded slowly. Father mentioned there's a doctor in Denver, someone who specializes in helping people with difficulties. Then go see him. Do the work. Figure out who Catherine Hart is supposed to be when she's not performing for someone else. And if I can't figure it out, then you keep trying, same as the rest of us. Catherine stood, moved toward the door, then stopped. You're going to be a wonderful mother. Lila froze. How did you? I can tell. You're glowing, and Cole keeps looking at you like you're made of glass. She smiled, and it was genuine. Congratulations. Really. She left before Lila could respond. Samuel appeared in the doorway, having clearly been listening. That was kind, he said. More than she deserved. Maybe. But carrying grudges is exhausting. I'd rather spend that energy on building something than on staying angry. Her father nodded slowly. You really are nothing like me. No, Lila agreed. I'm like Mother. Finally figured that out. She and Cole left the Hart Ranch and rode back to their own land, to the life they were building together. The sun was setting again, painting the valley in those same gold and red shades. But this time, Lila didn't see a battlefield. She saw home. You all right? Cole asked. Yeah, I am. No regrets about forgiving her? Not yet. Ask me again in a year. He laughed, pulled her close as they rode side by side. I love you, Lila Bennett. I love you too. The railroad ceremony happened the following week, exactly as planned. The territorial governor gave a speech about progress and partnership. Samuel and Thomas stood on opposite sides of the platform, civil but not friendly. And Lila and Cole stood together in front of everyone and announced they were expecting their first child. The valley erupted in applause and congratulations. Even people who'd gossiped about the scandalous wedding seemed genuinely happy. Or maybe they were just relieved there'd be something new to talk about besides land investigations and barn fires. Afterward, there was food and music and dancing. Lila found herself surrounded by women offering advice about pregnancy and childbirth, some of it helpful, most of it terrifying. Cole rescued her eventually, pulling her away to dance even though she was exhausted. Having fun? He asked, spinning her carefully. Define fun. Fair point. He pulled her closer. Mrs. Chen says we should pick names soon. We have months. She says it's good luck to choose early. Something about the baby knowing it's wanted. Lila laughed. And you believe in luck now? I believe in Mrs. Chen. She hasn't steered us wrong yet. They danced until Lila's feet hurt, and the sun had fully set and the party had wound down to just the stragglers. Then they said their goodbyes and rode home through darkness lit by stars. The Bennett ranch house looked warm and welcoming, with lamplight glowing in the windows. Mrs. Chen had left food warming on the stove and fresh flowers on the table, everything ready for them to come home to. Cole helped Lila down from her horse, his hands lingering on her waist. Tired? He asked. Exhausted. Too tired for one more thing? She looked up at him, saw the nervous excitement in his expression. What thing? He led her around to the side of the house where he'd been working on something for weeks, always when she was busy elsewhere. Now he pulled off the tarp covering his project. It was a bench. Beautifully carved wood with their initials and wedding date engraved on the back. Not the date they were supposed to get married, the date they actually did. For our children, he said, and their children. So they know where we started, how we built this. Lila traced the letters with her fingers, feeling tears burn behind her eyes. It's perfect. I wanted something permanent, Something that said we were here and we mattered and we chose each other when we didn't have to. She kissed him there in the starlight, holding on to this man who'd been forced into a marriage he didn't want and had somehow turned it into the foundation of everything good in both their lives. "Come on," she said when they broke apart. "Let's go to bed." They went inside together, locked the door behind them, and climbed the stairs to their room. The room that had been prepared for someone else but had become theirs through choice and commitment and love that grew from necessity into something real. Cole undressed her slowly, his hands gentle on her changing body. She helped him with his clothes until they were both bare in the lamplight. Just two people who'd started as strangers and become partners and lovers and best friends. "I never thought I'd be this happy," she said as he pulled her down onto the bed. "Neither did I." You ever wonder what would have happened if Catherine hadn't run? If you'd married her like you were supposed to? No, because that version of my life doesn't matter. This is the one I got. This is the one I want. He made love to her slowly, carefully, mindful of the child growing between them. And Lila felt it again, that sense of rightness, of being exactly where she was supposed to be, with exactly who she was supposed to be with. Not because someone else chose it for her, because she chose it herself. The baby came in early spring, a girl with dark hair in her father's eyes. They named her Emily, after the mother Lila never knew but had finally learned to honor. The christening was a small affair, just family and close friends. Samuel held his granddaughter with shaking hands and tears in his eyes. Thomas looked uncomfortable but proud, and Mrs. Chen supervised everything with the efficiency of a general commanding troops. Catherine sent a gift from Denver, a blanket she'd embroidered herself with flowers and stars. The note said she was doing better, seeing the doctor regularly, learning to stay in one place. Lila believed her, or at least wanted to. "She's beautiful," Samuel said, looking down at Emily, "just like her grandmother." "Tell me about her," Lila said. "About Mother, the real story, not the version you wanted everyone to believe." So Samuel did. Sitting in the Bennett ranch house with his granddaughter in his arms, he finally told the truth about Emily Hart, the brilliant woman who'd built a ranching empire and made the mistake of marrying a man too insecure to admit he needed her. It was the first honest conversation Lila could remember having with her father. Maybe the first honest conversation he'd had with anyone in years. When he finished, when he'd laid bare all his mistakes and regrets, Lila took her daughter back. "Thank you," she said. "For what?" "For finally telling the truth. For letting me know where I came from." Samuel nodded, stood to leave. But at the door he paused. "I know I don't deserve forgiveness," he said. "But I'm asking for it anyway, not for my sake. For hers." He gestured to the baby. "I'd like to be part of her life, to be a better grandfather than I was a father." Lila looked at Cole, who shrugged. "Your choice," his expression said. "You can visit," she said finally. "Once a week. But the moment you try to manipulate or scheme or use Emily the way you used Catherine and me, you're done. No second chances." "I understand." "Do you?" "I'm learning." He put on his hat. "It's harder than I expected, being honest, but I'm trying." He left. Thomas followed soon after, awkward but genuine in his congratulations. And then it was just Lila and Cole and their daughter and Mrs. Chen cleaning up dishes in the kitchen. "Well," Cole said, settling onto the sofa with Emily cradled in his arms, "we did it." "Did what?" "Built something
This story
real,
was posted
something
on
that's
the channel
ours."
west of
He
Betrayal.
looked down at their daughter,
Please do
his
not
expression
repost
soft.
it in any form.
Something worth having. Lila sat beside him, leaned her head on his shoulder, looked at the life they'd created, this child, this home, this partnership built on spite and necessity that had somehow transformed into love. "Yeah," she agreed, "we really did." Outside, the valley was turning green with spring. The northern section had been fully fenced and was already producing revenue. The railroad was under construction, right on schedule. Both the Hart and Bennett ranches were stable, profitable, no longer at each other's throats. And somewhere in Denver, Catherine was learning to stay in one place and face her demons instead of running from them. Everything had changed in a year. Everything except the fundamental truth Lila had discovered on her wedding day. That sometimes the worst thing that could happen turned out to be the best thing that ever did. She'd walked into a church wearing the wrong dress to marry the wrong man for all the wrong reasons. And she'd walked out with a partnership that became a marriage that became a love story worth telling. Not perfect, not smooth, but real and honest and built to last. Lila Bennett, formerly Lila Hart, formerly the invisible daughter, the replacement bride, the consolation prize, sat in her home with her husband and her daughter and knew she was exactly where she belonged. Not because someone else chose her, because she chose herself. And that made all the difference.